you want to take your seats, we're going to get started. You can start sitting in the middle of the room, please. Please take your seats. We're going to get started. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Hi, Facebook. Hi, Facebook. Oh, I think we're on Riverbend Live. Oh, YouTube. Christopher Dean back there is the expert for all those things, so thank goodness for him. Good evening, everybody. Hello. Thank you, everyone, so much for coming. This has just been such an awesome event to put together with Erica and all of you, so thank you so much. This is the first annual, and who knows? Maybe we'll be back next year. But it's the first annual Lehigh Valley Career Development Night, Encourage the Encouragers. We're really happy to have everyone here tonight for a night of impact, inspiration, and progress. My name is Aurora Brunowski, and I am honored to be a longtime friend and coworker in the past and the present of Erica Butler, who is this wonderful, amazing woman that put this event together for us and for cystic fibrosis. I got the opportunity to meet Erica at Target, where I started my HR career. We've been friends since then, and I'm lucky enough now to be a part of her business, HIHR International Human Resources. Aside of the HR career that I love, and I know we all have a passion for, I also have a passion for giving back. And the reason we're all here tonight is to not only develop and to help ourselves professionally grow, but it's also to give back and to learn more about cystic fibrosis. So as a part of the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, I do sit on the board locally for the Northeast chapter. And every year we have something called the Finest Gala. And it's where we honor Lehigh Valley young professionals who are under the age of 40, who give back, who are leaders among their peers, and really try to make a difference philanthropically in our community. Anyone who knows Erica knows she has a humongous heart and always likes to give back and makes it a point to put others before herself. So it was easy for me to nominate her as a finest honoree this year for cystic fibrosis. I don't mean to interrupt, but I did not know she was going to do this. She's going off script. I'm roasting her. She's going off script, but thank you. But we absolutely have an awesome night ahead for you. We have 6 incredible speakers, 9 breakout sessions, and HR professionals ready to help provide great feedback to you on your resume, as well as help you with your interview skills. But before we kick our night off, I just want to take a moment and again remind you that this event is about cystic fibrosis. In a few moments, we will be hearing from Jen, who had a very dear friend of hers who was the maid of honor in her wedding actually pass away from cystic fibrosis. So she will share a little bit more information about that soon. Actually, you know what? Since my slide's up, I will take a second to welcome you all before Jen shares. So we've been planning this event for a few months, and just, a heart for cystic fibrosis, but also just looking around with businesses I work with, people I know in the community, seeing a need for career development, seeing there's jobs that people are having a hard time filling, and just people that want to grow, want to know what to do next. So this is kind of where this event was birthed from, and I was really fortunate. I just started it out with just resume and mock interviews, and then as I told some other business leaders and different good friends that I know,
they were, interested, and I asked some of them to speak, and they said yes, and I'm so excited. I'm going to be taking notes all night, and I put as the caption, "You're not going to leave the same," because I just feel this way. Each speaker and breakout session here, the people here have impacted my life personally, made me better, helped me push myself, and I just think you're in for an awesome night. So thank you so much to each of you for coming, and it means the world to us, and thank you for every one of you that has volunteered to be part of this night. Thank you.
Hey, hi everybody. Thank you again for being here. It's so cool to see people come out not in support of cystic fibrosis, but in support of an organization that does so much to help people who are suffering from the disease. Quick poll, how many of you were familiar with cystic fibrosis before you arrived at this event? Most of you, that's awesome. I'm realizing that not a lot of people, as I start talking to people about it, there are a lot of people who don't know very much about cystic fibrosis, which is really strange to me because I know about cystic fibrosis and have for a really long time. Because as Aurora said, one of my good friends passed away a couple of years ago from cystic fibrosis. If Gretchen were here tonight, she would be absolutely furious with me if I started to talk about her by talking about how sick she was. I can just hear in my head right now. So I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about who she was apart from CF, so maybe you can understand why I and so many others loved her so much. I met Gretchen when I was 17. We both were part of an organization that mobilized teams of young musicians. We put young musicians together and then sent them out all across the world to work with partner organizations. We played music to raise awareness for our partner ministries, and then we also did like service projects. So whatever needed to be done while we were there, we would do it. She was, because she traveled with the same organization, she was a musician. She was an incredible singer. She had an incredibly powerful voice. I don't know how she did with the lung function that she had, but she had this amazing voice. In her life, she visited at least, from what I can remember, Honduras, Guatemala, Taiwan, the Philippines, Mexico, Singapore, all over the US and Canada, and probably some other places that I can't think of right now. She loved traveling. She loved experiencing new cultures and making new friends and having new adventures. She really loved just connecting with people all over the world. She was an absolutely amazing woman. I know that probably everybody says that about people after they pass away, but we all thought that when she was alive. We wouldn't say that to her face because she would never stand for that. She was not that kind of person. She would never let you compliment her. But she had a really quick sense of humor. We were always laughing when we were together. She was just really, really funny. And she was also a really wise person, so she gave really good advice. She wasn't afraid to give you advice that was hard to hear. So I remember on many occasions talking to her about a problem I was having or a situation, and she was very quick to point out that I was the problem in the situation. And I really, looking back, I really needed to hear that all of those times, because at that point in my life, I just hadn't developed that sense of self-awareness to understand that about myself. I developed that in part because of her influence in my life. I think there are probably a lot of people around here who could say, or who knew her, who could say this, but I am in large part the person that I am because of my friendship with her. She was an incredible influence in my life, and like I said, she had friends all over the world who would probably say the same thing. She was also a really kind and selfless person, so she was a woman of great faith, and her beliefs were really important to her. And it was because of what she believed about God and about herself that she really felt like it was her calling to spread hope any place that she was, and to encourage everybody that she came in contact with. And I think she knew that she was really gifted in that area, because she actually pursued counseling as a career, and she graduated with her master's in counseling about 9 months before she passed away. She would have made it an absolutely amazing counselor, and it really saddens me to know that she never really had a chance to like dive into that, because she would have affected so many people. She already did affect so many people. But she was never really able to pursue that career because in April of 2015, she was admitted to the hospital because she was coughing up blood and having a hard time breathing. They realized there was some bleeding in her lungs, and they put her into an induced coma to try and relieve some of the stress on her body. But at that point, her condition just deteriorated really fast, and she passed away just a couple of days later. If you don't know anything about CF, maybe you just know that it sucks. And that's a good place to start. It does, it sucks. I think the technical definition is something that seems strangely simple. It's a genetic mutation that changes a single protein in your body, and in a normal body, that protein affects how your cells are able to pass salt through the cell walls. Obviously, in a body with cystic fibrosis, it doesn't quite work that way. And so cystic fibrosis is, I mean, maybe this is reductionistic and just a layman's understanding, but it's essentially an inability to process salt, which sounds really simple, but that one simple protein change has immense effects across the entire body. So for instance, it can create a lot of like mucus buildup in the lungs. It makes it really difficult to breathe normally. It makes it much more likely that you're gonna catch lung infections. And it also makes it a lot harder to fight those lung infections. I mentioned that Gretchen was an incredible singer, and she was an amazing singer. But when we decided which songs she would sing versus what songs other people would sing, we would actually have to take her breathing rate into account. So if the words went by too fast, she wouldn't have time on stage to be able to breathe, to be able to sing the next phrase. We had to like think about these things. CF also affects the body's ability to digest food. So mucus can build up in the intestines as well. It makes it really hard. It makes the feeling of digestion really unpleasant. And not, CF manifests differently in different people. This is just what I know from my experience with Gretchen. And it also makes all of your normal like bodily functions really unpleasant for you. Gretchen, it also means that you can't absorb nutrients in the same way. So I remember that when Gretchen was alive, she lived mostly on whole milk and gummy bears. She would she would tour with like a 10-pound bag of gummy bears because gummy bears and whole milk were the only food that didn't make her feel miserable all the time. And I used to really worry about her because she was also like perpetually underweight. She was really sick a lot of the time, and I wondered like, is she getting enough nutrients? But she actually discussed it with her doctor one time, and her doctor said, you know what, like your body is just so bad at absorbing nutrients. It wouldn't matter if all you were eating were fruits and vegetables. If you just pack more nutrients into your system, your body can't absorb any more than it already is. So if you feel good on whole milk and gummy bears, you go for it. So she did. CF also, for people that suffer from CF, they spend a lot of time combating this on an everyday basis. I remember that Gretchen had a lot of treatments that she went through every day. So she took enzyme pills with every single meal that she took. She had like nebulizer treatments that she did multiple times a day. She also had this big like vibrating vest thing that like shook loose the mucus in her lungs. So while we were on tour, she would bring all of these things in the van with her and then in and out of every new place that we stayed. And while the rest of her team were out meeting new people and seeing the sights of whatever place that they were in, she would find a quiet spot in a lonely place and sit there for an hour and a half or 2 hours every day and just do her treatments. All of this not just to like stay at a level of healthy, but just to stay at like a basic level of functioning. So most of her tours were about like 1 to 4 months long, and then when we would come back on tour, she would just have like a standing appointment at the hospital in the Twin Cities, because she would come back from every tour with like multiple strains of pneumonia and at like 20% lung function, and it was just absolutely crazy. So she just had like a standing appointment at the hospital. She knew, okay, I'm coming home from tour and I'm gonna have to go have a stay in the hospital. And she hated being in the hospital, and that's a dumb thing to say because everybody hates being in the hospital. But for her, it was more than just like the normal discomforts of being in the hospital, the being alone and having IVs and things like that. She really hated having to deal with doctors. So let me insert a quick aside. Don't think that I'm bad-mouthing doctors. Doctors are absolutely incredible, amazing people who live these amazing selfless lives to make other people happy. They're wonderful. I have nothing but the highest respect for doctors. She had a really hard time dealing with doctors because she just dreaded some of her interactions with them because they sometimes made her feel guilty for the kind of life that she was living. She was really sick, and so every new tour that she went on just kind of wore her body down more and more and more. And she said that the doctors sometimes would make her feel like she didn't quite appreciate what they were doing for her, that they would work really hard to make her healthy, and then she would go right back out on tour and make herself sick again. She hated that feeling of being torn between appreciating the sacrifice that somebody else was making and wanting to live the life that she wanted to live. There was one conversation, though, that she had with the doctor that I remember really clearly because she called me afterwards and she was like choked up recounting it. The doctor came into her room right after she went to the hospital and kind of checked her numbers and said, all right, where'd you travel this time? And she told him, and then he asked, okay, when are you leaving next? And she said, oh, I'm going to Taiwan in, 4 weeks or whatever. And so she kind of looked at her chart and nodded and said, okay, well, let's talk about what we need to do to get you ready for that trip. And she said she almost cried in that moment because she had never been treated that way by a doctor before. A doctor's highest priority, and it should be, a doctor's highest priority is to make their patients healthy and to add years to their life. But this was a doctor that understood and respected what was important to her. I don't mean to be trite, but I feel like there's no other way to say this. Gretchen was very much the kind of person that cared about the amount of life in her years than the number of years in her life. She wanted the chance to make the same kind of decisions for her own life that everybody else got to make, and she wanted to choose the kind of life that she was able to have. She wasn't willing to give up the experiences that she was having and the places that she was visiting and the people she was meeting and the purpose that that all gave her, just for a couple more years of staying at home and living beneath her own potential. The one thing that I feel like really stood out about Gretchen for me is that in every way she refused to be defined by her condition. She absolutely refused to be held back by cystic fibrosis. But obviously, CF impacts every aspect of your life, and her condition did hold her back in a lot of really impactful ways. She passed away a few years ago at the age of 30, so that meant that she lived half as long as a lot of us can expect to live. She left behind a husband, a mom, 3 sisters who just absolutely adored her, and of course scores of friends around the world who miss her more than words can express. She decided when she was really young that she would never have kids. Even if her body was healthy enough, she decided this for herself because she didn't feel like it was really fair to pass along the genes for a condition for which there's no cure. So even though I think she really hated to admit it, she was in very many ways really defined by the limits of her condition. That said, there's another way to look at this. And that is that she lived at least 2 decades longer than even she expected to. She told me one time, and her mom told me the same story actually, when she was diagnosed at the age of 2, the doctors told her mother not to get attached, which is like the most horrible thing that I've ever heard a human being saying to another human being. But I think they were trying to brace her for the reality that their daughter would not live very long. When she was old enough to understand her own diagnosis, she made peace with the fact that she would never live to see her teens. But she did. She lived to age 30, and she lived an absolutely incredible life. And I know that if she had been conscious in the days before her death, and you could have asked her, she would have told you for sure that she had no regrets. And the reason that she was able to live as long as she did, and the reason that she was able to live as full a life as she did, was in large part because of the work of the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. Maybe you don't know anybody who's affected by CF, but the genetic mutation that causes it actually isn't that rare. About 1 in 50, actually more than 1 in 50 of us carry it. In some populations, it's actually closer to 1 in 25, which means almost certainly some of us here tonight are carriers of that gene, and we will probably walk around our whole lives without ever knowing it because it's a recessive gene. But some of us are probably carriers. For sure, people that you have met are carriers of this gene. In the US, the chances of a person being born with CF are about 1 in 10,000. And a little more than 10,000 children are born every day. So that means that today, somewhere in this country, somebody welcomed a baby into their family, and they don't know yet that that baby has an incurable, debilitating illness. If that were your child, or your nephew, or your niece, or your godson or daughter, you would absolutely want an organization like the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation working tirelessly to find a cure. They have made absolutely incredible advancements in the past couple of years, the last couple decades with CF. Their research has resulted in every major treatment and every major drug used to treat CF today. 50 years ago, the median survival age for a patient with CF was 10, and today it's 37, which is incredible progress. But there's a lot more to do. Sorry, are you getting choked up? I'm sorry, Erica. It's good. No, it's amazing. It's incredible progress. But there's more to do. The CF Foundation doesn't receive any federal funding. They're completely funded by individuals and private companies. So there are a lot of ways that you can get involved. You can go to cff.org/get-involved to find all the different ways that you can get involved. There's resources in case you know somebody who is suffering from CF. There's ways that you can volunteer and give, or I'm sure Erica will tell you all about the ways that you can give here tonight to this amazing organization. So I'm here today because I lost one of my best friends to CF. But many of you are probably here because you want to talk about development and leadership, and that's awesome.
It is awesome.
I promise we'll stop talking about CF in a minute here. No, we probably won't. That's a lie. But I will say the two are not separate discussions. Our community does need more effective leaders, and so does the search for the cure for CF. There's no, in my opinion, there's no value in leading other people unless you're leading them towards a goal worth reaching. And this is absolutely a goal worth reaching. There is a cure to cystic fibrosis, and we will find it. And you tonight can make the decision to either wait and hope for that day to come, or to get involved and to help make it happen. Because someone in our country today was born with cystic fibrosis. And if we act soon and we do it right, they don't have to die from it.
Thank you, Jen. Before Aurora introduces our first guest speaker, I do want to just take a quick moment and going off of what Jen said, what has made me so excited to be part of this organization is the amazing progress. There is so many wonderful organizations out there for all types of health reasons, a lot of different wonderful things to support. But when you really look at the progress the foundation has made, the new drugs that have come out year after year, the last 4 or 5 years, I mean, it is remarkable. They are using that money for such good, and lives are getting lengthened, being impacted. I mean, the more people I've met with CF, I'm just blown away what they deal with every day. But in just the last few years, how much better their lives have gotten. It's unbelievable. So your money and my money is going to a great cause. So thank you, Aurora. Thank you, Jen.
And one thing I just want to add is that cystic fibrosis receives no federal funding. And that is something that I like to share because there are a lot of amazing causes that receive a lot of money federally. So that is something I like to include because the only way we're making these great strides towards a cure is by private donation. So with that, Jen, thank you so much. Erica, thank you so much. But it is time, without further ado, that we introduce some of our amazing speakers. And the first one up is Joe Barrios. Joe, come on up. I'm going to chat you up a little bit first. So Joe Barrios is a charismatic leader, entertainer, entrepreneur, and a man of faith that attracts others to a higher level of financial success. Joseph has developed companies revolving around landscape, property management, marketing, and real estate investment. He then developed the With Joe Show and Bank 7, which helps business owners and entrepreneurs grow their businesses and increase their impact. Please welcome Joe.
Thank you. I usually like to start things up by making people mingle. So for the people who haven't had the opportunity to meet someone new tonight, I would ask for everybody to stand up for a second, scope the room, and say hi to someone you did not have the opportunity to say hi to tonight. And as we make our way back to a closer seat, keyword closer seat, let's bring it into the middle. I want to say thank you for everybody who came out tonight to support. So I am extremely honored to have been selected to come out and speak. Every time I have an opportunity to speak, I do not take it lightly because I am aware that, my life has had a lot of ups and downs and that my story is something that people can relate to. So oftentimes I have funny conversations with Keith back here, and I'm always like, who qualified this guy, right? Like, who qualified me? And then I start to think about other people as well. Like, who qualified them to be the speaker that they are, to be the leader, to be the expert that they are? And then I recognize, as a man of faith, as she mentioned, I have been qualified the whole time. My past has prepared me for where I am today. So tonight, I have the opportunity to speak about courage. I was asked to talk about courage, which is such an interesting subject because it's a topic that there aren't really metrics to go based on. So when asked to speak about something like that, I said, sure. I was driving my car, and then I started to think about courage. And I was like, oh man, I have no idea what to talk about. And I have this style of speaking that is a little unorthodox, so I try to treat everything like it's its own message or like its own sermon. So if I had a sermon tonight, I would call it The Courage to Go Up. Everybody look at your neighbor and say, let's go up. So the background on myself is I was born and raised in the Lehigh Valley. I like to tell my sob story really, really short. I'm going to hold this cord just so I don't trip on it. Just so you know, I don't typically dress like Carlton from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I was actually invited to a meeting at a country club, and I was told I can't dress how I normally dress. So, like, she looks extremely cool. That's how I would look, and I just imagine I look that way. But I'm going to hold this cord so I do not trip. But again, backstory on myself, your typical Hispanic kid from the Lehigh Valley, okay? Born and raised in poverty, went to 5 different elementary schools. By the time I was 12, my mom unfortunately was involved in the wrong things, and God bless her soul because she means so well, but she got caught into, drugs in the system and whatnot. So at 12, I had to become my own man. Becoming your own man means you become stubborn, you think you know it all, you start to do things that you shouldn't do, and you kind of have to adapt and survive. Survive and thrive, right? I had the opportunity to move with my dad when I was 12, which I'm extremely grateful for, but by the time I moved with my father, I thought I already knew it all, and I was already doing my own thing to try and get those new Jordans, the nice clothes, and everything. Fast forward a little bit, I went to East Stroudsburg University. I studied business management and marketing. I did not learn much about business management or marketing, but I did learn a lot about relationships. And I did learn a lot about different cultures, and I did learn things that I didn't learn in the neighborhood that I grew up in, the block that I grew up on, the people that I grew up with. So, background of myself, East Stroudsburg, poor kid, poverty, mom, backstory, sob story. That's it. It's done. Who I am today, in the past 5 years, I've had the opportunity to develop companies in different industries. Although they are similar and correlated in some ways, they're all different and they all are self-sustaining. So my first company I developed was a landscaping company, which now has a little over 100 clients, self-sustains. You will not catch me on a mower. I promise. I can't stand it. It's the worst, but it does well. It led to my next company, which is an investment company focused on crowdfunding real estate deals. So at any given time, I'm managing anywhere from $400,000 to a little under $1 million crowdfunding real estate deals, flipping homes, making them look like the end result of HGTV. While doing these two things, I started to see that people were asking me questions, though. So who is this Puerto Rican kid with the tattoos, with the ripped jeans, that's moving and shaking at the country club dressed like Carlton, right? And these questions started to raise an awareness around what I do. And what I found that I do well is building those relationships, making those connections, the thing I learned in college that I didn't go to college for. And while doing that, I created this company called Bank 7. So what Bank 7 is it's a business growth program focused on helping small businesses grow. And last year, we had the opportunity to help 31 companies grow anywhere from 15% on a minimum, but all the way up to 200%, which is absolutely amazing. And while doing this, I started to see that people in the Lehigh Valley are extremely successful, and we don't recognize how successful the people are here. We always think Philly, New York City, California, Miami, etc. But there are people who drive nice cars, have big homes, and do crazy things that own businesses here. So we created this show, which is called the With Joe Show, really showing successful people in their element and making people recognize that, hey, they put their pants on the same way as me. They tie their shoes the same way as me. They like Honey Nut Cheerios just like me. They eat way too much Chick-fil-A just like me. But they have the same challenges just like all of us. And that was the concept of the show, which leads to why I'm here tonight. Again, the courage to go up, right? The definition of courage, which is why I have my MacBook, because I would not remember it, is the mental or moral strength to venture, persevere, and withstand danger, fear, or difficulty. The adjectives of courage are courageous, bold, brave. And when I thought of courage, I'm very much like a child. I thought of superheroes. And like I say, when I'm like a child, I see a cool car, and I'm like, that car is nice, but if fire came out that car, it'd be so much better. And then my wife looks at me and thinks I'm just ridiculous. The reason I'm going to discuss courage tonight is because everybody in this room are looking to be a leader, grow in their company, whether it's someone you're employed by or someone you're looking to employ, you're looking to go up. And the purpose behind courage is because I feel courage is one of the absolutely necessary traits that we need to have as a leader in the marketplace. The reason I say we need courage is because it's inevitable that as you become a leader, you're going to endure pain. Can I get a whoop whoop? Oh, they're still with me. You're still with me. It's inevitable that you're going to endure pain. And I saw a quote this week. And the quote was very interesting because it said, pain, the preparation sometimes comes packaged as pain. So when I think of my backstory of all the things that I've gone through in my life, whether it was my mom doing drugs, all the way to me selling drugs, to me being arrested, everything that would have disqualified this kid to be who I am today, I recognize that that was preparation for me to be here to speak with you tonight. Can I get an amen? Oh, man, it's church. Now, the question is, how do you build courage? And there's no real specific answer. There's no real specific answer. It's something that comes from within. But the three things that I thought about, and I'm going to keep it to three things so you could count them down, and by the time I get to my third thing, you can act like you're interested. The three things I'm going to discuss starts with dream big, but don't be afraid to start small. Now, I say this, dream big, but don't be afraid to start small, because today we have information readily available to us at all times in the palm of our hand. See, I'm a young guy, I'm 31, but I remember even having to go on AOL dial-up, go to the library, do a typical works cited. But now we have so much information available just by saying Siri. And because of that, it creates this resistance for us to ever take our first steps. See, we're so focused on what we know, and then we stop from taking the steps. I just thought of this before I got here. We're so focused on what we know, and then we don't take our first steps, when in reality, we should take our first steps with what we know and do a lot with what we know right now and learn more on the process. Oh, man, I feel good right now. You guys are good. I read a quote this week, and it says, "The one who moves a mountain begins by carrying small stones." Now, think about it. The one who moves a mountain begins by carrying small stones. It's very easy to get tied up with what we don't know. It's very easy to dream big and think about the Lamborghini we're going to buy and the nice house we're going to get and the frozen therapy that's going to make us get abs we're going to do and the nice lips we're going to have. It's very easy to think about these things, and I call that the honeymoon phase of being an entrepreneur. That's the lottery ticket that we imagine what we're going to do when we become successful. But see, the trick here is not getting caught up with just that and recognizing that you're going to endure pain and that you have to take the small steps. And when you start seeing that you have to take the small steps, you start writing it down. My goals, I got to write it down. I got to pin them on my vision board. And then you see that it adds up, and it starts to feel like the water is coming up to your neck. And then what happens? We don't take our first steps. See, I like to encourage my clients, rather than focusing only on the destination, which sometimes can feel very far away, turn the car on, put the GPS going, and go to where you want to go and start to make that distance seem a little bit shorter by taking the actionable steps that you need to take. See, if you want abs, hashtag Summer Body 2021 right here, you need to slow down on the Chick-fil-A, and I swear I should get a plug from Chick-fil-A right now, because I will say Chick-fil-A to the death of me, and this is sincere. Chicken nuggets are the worst thing that has ever happened to my diet, but I promise you 2021, check me and I'll have some abs. But in order to get that body you want, in order to get the success you want in business, in order to get the promotion you want at the job, in order to get the client that you want, you have to make the actionable steps and start to take them with what you know right now. Which leads to my next point. I said there was going to be three. The second point is face your fears, which is very interesting because fear was in the definition of courage, and it had to do with persevering and facing fears. Facing your fears is the absolute necessary step of building courage. And I say this because fear is something that oftentimes causes the resistance between us and where we ultimately want to be. We give fear too much authority over our mind. When we fear something, you saw that I hit puberty for a second. When we fear something, it challenges us. And when something challenges us and it makes it feel uneasy, we stop moving. What I recommend people doing tonight, wherever you are, whether you're at the prime of your life right now or you're at the lowest point of your life, I want you to write down what it is you fear the most. Because when you write your fears and you start to see them and you recognize what they are, they no longer have power over you. You start to release them. You release that energy. You could pray on it, whatever the case may be. And as soon as you don't give them the authority that they have over your life, it allows you to start to move forward. Can I get a whoop? Oh, yeah, they're still with it. And my last point, my very last point, and this is like the most important one for me, I like to call it making room. Tap your neighbor, say make room. Come on, tap your neighbor, say make room. Now, see, making room is very interesting because we live in this day and age where we're extremely involved in our social media. We get to see Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, everything. It's crazy. I could just keep going. But because of that, we also follow these gurus, these experts, these people who are at the top of their game, and every time we see them, they look busy. But I like to challenge people. There's being busy and being full. See, being busy is something that we are so susceptible to doing because of who we follow that it doesn't allow us to make room for the things that are supposed to come into our life. I like to compare it to a plate of food. So let's imagine a plate of food. We have macaroni on that plate. We have Chick-fil-A chicken nuggets on that plate. Let's throw some peas on that plate. No one eats peas. I like peas, but no one eats the peas, right? Now, this plate is been compartmentalized. When we're busy, it's like we're taking a spoon and we're just kind of swirling it all around the plate, swirling it, swirling it, swirling it. First thing that's going to happen is the peas kind of get all over the place. The cheese kind of gets all over the place. And I'll eat a chicken nugget once in a while, right? But when we start to do that, it's the same concept of being busy. What happens to the plate is it starts to not look like it has any room. And when you don't allow room, you don't recognize the doors that are opening in front of you in the marketplace. I watch people time in and time out miss opportunities because they're so focused on being busy with clients, with jobs, with things that really don't belong in their life. But because they're so focused on being busy, they don't make room. And it goes down to their personal life as well. When we're so busy, we miss our kids growing up. We miss when my wife is giving me the look to tell me that, I'm going to take a shower. This is we're all growing up, so I can say there's a certain time when your wife says she's going to take a shower, it means something else. But when we're busy, we miss that opportunity. We miss that opportunity. And what I'm saying is you need to make room. This leads to the concept of being full. See, when you're full, you have selected the things in your life, in the marketplace, that are absolutely important to the growth of your business, to the growth of you personally, to the growth of your family, whatever it is. When you make room and you focus on being full and opposed to being busy, now the things that you want start to come into your life. What you didn't recognize is when there was peas, macaroni, and chicken, mom had brownies on the side that she was trying to put on the plate as well. But you made it so messy that, boy, you done messed up. You ain't getting no brownies, right? So make room. Make room. So if we have our 3 points of building courage to be successful in the marketplace, again, it is making room, facing your fears, and can anybody remember the first one? Ooh, dream big, but start small. See, and I love that you're listening because the main thing you have to do is when I got up here again, you thought it might have been Carlton, but you trusted the process. And that's exactly what we have to do tonight. You have to trust the process, okay? I believe if you're here tonight, you all have courage. You all have the ability to be a leader. The fact that you took the opportunity to come out on a Thursday night to invest in yourself shows how much of a leader you already are, and you're taking the steps that you can take with what you know, which is absolutely amazing. So I'm going to declare it tonight. Again, I try to treat everything like a sermon. I'm going to declare that tonight, if you're in this room, there's only one direction we go in this room, and that's going up. Right? The courage to go up. So if you're in this room, you're going to go up. There's no room for sinking. There's no room for drowning. You're swimming. You may not be where you want to be in your business. You may be at the top of your business, but regardless of what, you're swimming up. And I declare that over everybody. And if you really believe that, I need you to give a round of applause to yourself. I want to say thank you so much for having me. I hope you all have an amazing night. There is a crazy lineup of speakers, so I was extremely nervous being up here. Thank you so much. God bless you.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Michaela Parlett. Michaela is known for her passion for people, her zest for cultivating relationships, her ability to equip people with the tools they need to pursue a purpose-driven life. She is a single mother, a compelling communicator, an author and speaker. Her nonprofit, 8-7, was established with a vision to help women develop more authentic friendships in a world that may seem more surface level. My dear friend, Michaela.
Oh, hi, guys. It's so fun to be here today. So Erica and I have known each other for a really long time. So it's exciting to just be here and to support her. She is just someone who is full of love and joy, and she truly loves people well, doesn't she? For those of you who know her, she loves people so, so well. I'm just so excited to be here. Okay, so I really want this to be a conversation. I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk with you. So this is definitely going to be more of a conversation. Okay, are we cool with that? Okay, awesome. I want to give you really quickly, though, 3 tips for retention. Because did you know if you just sit and you listen, you retain about 8% of what you hear? And there's a lot of goodness, I feel like, that's going to be here today and that you're going to hear and learn. And I want you to retain more than that. So I'm going to give you 3 tips. And these are things that have also worked for me. They're science-based, but they're also, I use them all the time. I love to learn. Anybody just love to learn? I feel like since you're all here, you probably do love to learn, but I love to read, and I love conferences, day conferences, weekend, whatever it is. I'm just like a sponge. I love to learn. But knowledge is power, but applied knowledge is powerful. So I really think that in order to really put it into play, you got to retain what you learn. So 3 tips for you. The first one is to respond to a message, okay? So I love, too, that when Joe was up here, you guys were responding. I'm a big responder. In church, I am the girl that is saying, amen, so good. You know, like I am just in it to win it. So I want you guys to feel the same way too. But when you respond with your body, whether it's verbally or you're nodding your head or you lift your hands or whatever it is, when you use your body, it helps to solidify what you're learning, okay? So I want you to turn to your neighbor and say, I'm going to respond to the message. Yes, okay. The second thing is to write it down. The faintest ink is better than the most retentive memory. The faintest ink is better than the most retentive memory. You ever think like you hear something and you're like, that is so good, I'm going to remember it for the rest of my life. And then you try to explain what you learned and you totally don't remember it at all. And you're like, gosh, I wish I would have written it down. So write it down, okay? The third thing is to teach it to somebody else. Have you ever found that that's really helps you to learn, like relearn something or to really solidify what you learned? So, and you want to do it immediately. So not this weekend or tomorrow, but when you drive home, I want you to call your friend, call your spouse, whoever it is, and tell them a little bit about what you learned for their benefit, but also for yours, because it's going to help you remember things. Okay, so my topic today is called a network of friends, and we're going to come at this from a few different angles, and some angles may like hit a nerve. Sometimes I say I look cute, but I also sometimes am known to give a message you might need to hear, not one you necessarily want to. But if you can handle it, say I can handle it. Yes, you can. Okay, so the other day, a friend of mine and I, we went hiking, and if you were to look at us as a pair, you probably wouldn't think they go hiking often. Like, it's just not a thought you would think of. But we decided to go hiking. I should have known I was in for a little bit of a treat when I met her on the trail. And she gets out of her car, I get out of my car, and she's like, hey, girl, where are the restrooms? I'm like, what? You've been hiking before, right? And she's like, nope, first time. Where are the restrooms? I'm like, okay. Kelly, the closest thing to a restroom is that bush right over there. So, and like the look of horror on her face, I just knew that we were kind of in for a treat. And I am by no means like an expert in hiking. I'm like, okay, we're two very successful businesswomen. Probably together, our teams are maybe over 400 women. Like, we can do this together. So we start hiking, and we're huffing and puffing, and we're having a grand old time because we were talking business ideas, and we were just coming up with lots of great stuff. And I also love to like look around and just observe where I'm at. And I was noticing we were going past like so many beautiful like rock walls. And this one in particular, I was like, man, there's like very similar. They kind of look really similar. And then I realized it looked similar because we were going in circles. And it was the same rock wall. So I said to my friend Kelly, I'm like, okay, we're going in circles. I'm going to climb up this thing because there was like a little ledge up at the top. And because I just felt like I needed to get a different view of where we were. And so I climb up the thing. It took a little bit of effort and kind of scared at the same time, but I got up to this ledge finally, and as I'm standing on this ledge, I look out and I could very clearly see the path, and I could see where we were going wrong, and I could see where we should have gone, and it was marked. Have you ever been hiking and the trail is marked on the tree? Right? We literally missed the mark. But it was lower than like all the other marks. And I say that to like make myself feel better, but we just kept missing it, right? So, but the interesting thing was how quickly I could see where we should have been going. The other thing I noticed was that my friend looked so small, and she's never looked small to me before. Not that she's like a big person, but I'm 5'0". She's 5'10". So I've never looked at her once and thought, wow, she's small. Like, I just never have thought. So it was just really kind of funny to look down and just see how small she was. So I had this moment where I'm standing on the ledge, and I thought to myself, there is something so profound about perspective. And sometimes you need to get up higher than your problem or your issue to see it. So the problem doesn't need to change in order for your perspective of it to change. And for some of us, your problems won't change until your view of them does. So one of the things I feel like I've been called to do is to shift a thought, shift a culture, shift a room, and for the focus to be on personal responsibility again. Can I get an amen? And it's not necessarily a generational thing. I think people always say, oh, the millennials, like they're the ones that need to take personal responsibility. But I've been coaching women for over a decade now, and it's all ages. I think it's a societal thing. I don't necessarily think it's a generational, one generation thing. So I just really think that personal responsibility is so incredibly important. So one of the things that I feel like, not that I'm an expert on, but I just love talking about and teaching on and preaching on is friendships. And so much so that my friend and I, we decided to start a nonprofit. It's a women's organization. It's called 8-7, and our focus is on helping women create authenticity in friendship again. We believe that we were not created as women to compete. We were made to be in community, to lift one another up, because the beautiful thing about every single person in this room is that none of us have the exact same strengths. Like, we all have different strengths, and it's so cool when you come together. So if you have two people and we each have an idea, if we share an idea, guess what? We both have two ideas, right? And so I think community is incredibly important. And so at 8-7, we do trips for women and gatherings, which are larger, usually 85 to 100 women. We bring in speakers. We talk about things that women go through and that we sometimes go through like behind closed doors. Our last event, one of Erica and I's really good friends, she has been struggling or had been struggling with infertility for a really long time. And so she talked about her journey, which infertility is something that people don't really talk about as much. And so we want to start talking about things that we deal with and we struggle with behind closed doors. Because here's the thing, when you struggle with something in the dark, like you're alone and you're in isolation, and it feels so big, but as soon as you open up and you bring light to a situation, the first thing you're going to notice is you're going to have people that say, hey, me too. And all of a sudden you realize you're not alone. And so friendship is just something that I think is really incredibly important. And it's one of those things where when you can learn to be a good friend, that is the foundation for so many other amazing, rich relationships, not only in your friend group, but you can also bring that into your career. Because I think that when you can build a network of friends, it's really also building your net worth, right? So the more people you know and the more people that you can love and care on and genuinely care on, I just think is so, so important. So I'm going to talk about friendship today. And I'm going to talk about it in a little bit of a unique way, at least I think. But I'm going to give you some different characteristics of what it is to be a good friend. But you know, sometimes the hardest relationship that we have is the one with ourselves. Do you ever find that? I recently watched this one show. I think it was on Netflix, and it was called Made for More. And it's Rachel Hollis's conference, and they kind of did like a documentary. Anybody see that? You've watched it? No, you haven't? You should. You totally should. Well, she asked this group, I mean, there were thousands upon thousands of people there, and one of the questions that she asked was, if you are in this room and you hate your body. And almost every single person in the room stood up. And I started crying because that was just so incredibly sad to me, because the thing is, so many of us are our own worst enemy, and you can only love people to the level that you love yourself. I'm going to say that again. You can only love people to the level that you love yourself. A couple years ago, I was coming out of an abusive marriage and learning how to love myself because I had been in such a low place. And I was in a low place that nobody knew about. Not a lot of people knew about what was going on behind closed doors. And one of the reasons why I had enough courage to step out was because I started hearing the way that I was talking to myself, and it was not great. And my daughter was 1 at that time. And you know, with kids, it's not what's taught, it's what's caught. Right? So you can tell your kids, you can teach your kids to be kind, to love other people, not to gossip. But if you're not kind to people and you gossip, you talk about other people behind their back, what are they going to catch? Right? That stuff. And it's really important. You can tell your daughter, you can tell your son, like, you're beautiful, you're handsome, you can do anything you set your mind to. But how does she see you talk to you in a mirror? That's what she's going to catch. And so I thought, oh my goodness, it's so incredibly important to talk about the friendship that you have with yourself. So I just want you to just kind of be aware of how you talk to yourself. I had a horrible chest cold this week. I was afraid this was going to happen. Okay. You know, one of the things I thought about, though, was in this chest cold, like, all this stuff that was coming up, I'm like, oh, CF. You know, like, we have no idea how incredibly lucky we are to just even, like, breathe well on a daily basis. Okay. Shoot, I was about to say something really epic, too, and I totally ruined it. But here's my thought. Thank you so much, Joe. The fatal flaw of human wisdom is that it promises that we can change our relationships without needing to change ourselves. That's good, right? I feel like that was a really good one. But it's so true. It really, really does start with us. So before you leave today, I want you to do one thing in particular. I want you to write down what's one thing that you can do to start being a better friend to yourself. maybe it's writing down some affirmations and saying them every single morning. So my daughter, Malin, if you're friends with me on any of my social media platforms, I post a lot of videos of her because she's actually she's pretty funny. Anybody seen any Malin videos? Yeah, she's a pretty incredible kid. She's 8, but she's really like 48. And some days I'm like, are you raising me? Because I kind of feel like that's the case. But anyways, it's just it's so fun to raise little kids and to have, the amount of influence that we have over them. But I have her do these things. It's called Malin's morning words. And so every single morning before she leaves for school, she stands there. I have them on these little index cards, and she recites the words. And she says, I'm a kind and confident kid. I treat others the way I want to be treated. I am beautiful no matter what I'm wearing, like all these different things. And that she trusts her gut, and that she is a kingdom builder, and God loves her exactly for who she is, and she's going to love other people the way that God loves people. And it's just so cute because now she pretty much has it memorized, and she's got these little this total tude when she says certain things, and I just love it so much. But I want to give you guys 5 characteristics of a really good friend. And my pastor recently talked about this, so some of these I took straight from him, and I'll give him credit for the ones that I just pretty much stole right from him. But the first one is, a good friend is someone that I can show every side of me and not feel judged. I used to be so afraid to show any part of me that wasn't perfect, right? Because I was afraid of people's judgment. But a really good friend is one that loves every single side of you, right? I think that's incredibly important. But on the flip side of that, we need to make sure that that's the kind of friend that we are too. The second thing is, a good friend would rather hurt your feelings momentarily than watch you hurt your future. Okay? So they'd rather hurt your feelings momentarily than watch you hurt your future. Right? So they hold a mirror up to you. Because here's the thing, we all have blind spots that we can't see, right? When you look in a mirror personally, you can't see behind you. So a good friend is somebody that holds up a mirror to your blind spots. Number 3, a good friend has good character. My pastor says that true character is revealed in the way that you treat people you don't need. Think about that. And I want you to observe yourself as well in that. So true character is revealed in the way that we treat people we don't need. Number 4, good friends are in the stands in every season, because there's a difference between good friends and fans, right? Number 5, a good friend gives grace. And what I mean by this is that a friend should understand your heart, because nobody's perfect, and we have to give people grace through their struggles. So this is my challenge for you. If you want friends like that, you have to be a friend like that. So be the kind of friend that you are looking for. If you want a friend that gives grace, then you need to give grace first. Did you notice I said first? Give grace first. If you want a good friend that doesn't judge, then don't judge. If you want a friend that has good character, you need to check your heart, check your character. Have you ever thought to yourself, how do I treat people that I don't need? So those are just 5 characteristics of what I really feel like are great, great friends. But again, like I said, I want you to shift your perspective of this and look at it from a different angle and think, how can I be a better friend to others? Another thing that I just wanted to give you 3 tips for relationships in a work environment, whether it's your clients or your coworkers. And the first one is to treat everyone you meet like they have a sign around their neck that says, "Make me feel important." It's a visual that I learned a long time ago in a previous career. And so literally every single time I see somebody new, or a client walks in, or a potential client or a coworker walks into the office, I imagine him or her with a sign around his or her neck that says, "Make me feel important, and I ask questions, right? The art of asking questions is such an important thing. When people know that they're valued, they will stay, right? People stay where they feel appreciated. So even if that is a client, right, make sure you appreciate them. The second thing is the power of a no. So my mom used to always tell this to me. She said, Michaela, sometimes people want to see how you react to a no before they'll ever give you a yes. And not too long ago, I had a job interview, and I really thought that I had it, because it was like I read the job description, and I was like, that is literally me in a job description. Like, I would slay this role. And I went through a really long interview process, 3 different interview processes, and I put my heart and soul into this one project, and I fell short, and I didn't make it. But I sent this really beautiful email because I just believe that when someone says no, they're really seeing how you're going to react to this. And the cool thing is, I now have an opportunity. They reached out to me later on to be a speaker at one of their conferences. So you just never know what can lead from you just being kind and how you respond to your no. The other thing I think is incredibly important. So outside of the nonprofit, I'm the general manager of a company called Scaling Creative. And we're a video content creation company, and we do a lot of like social media stuff and training. And my boss is really into YouTube. He's got like a gazillion followers and all of that jazz. But one of the things we talk about a lot nowadays on social media is provide valuable content without asking for anything in return. Okay? Because when you become the expert, you put out a lot of really good content. People, when they do need what you provide, they're going to think of you without you having to sell to them. So provide really good content, respond well and with grace to a no, and treat everyone that you meet like they have a sign around their neck that says, make me feel important. So I just want to encourage you to really value the people that are in your life and that are in your space. Because that foundation of what it means to be a good friend and to have good relationships will really flow into so many different areas of your life. So be a good friend when you go out there. And also make sure you think about this, teach this to a friend, and as the rest of the speakers come up, really respond, be all into it, because it's really going to help you write things down. And thank you so much just for having me. I'm super excited to be here. Girlfriend.
Thank you, Michaela. All right, so our next speaker is Keith Capagna. He works with HR, finance, and executive teams looking to improve employees' productivity. Keith has 20 years sales and HR experience and recently founded LifeWork Integration, a progressive consultancy created, that's a hard word, to revise. One of you. He's also the co-founder of HROI, a no-cost vendor-agnostic return on investment software, helping HR teams grow their business acumen and get HR software products approved faster. This is Keith.
Thank you very much. I saw Joe, by the way, you notice I'm rocking the Bank 7. I saw Joe holding the mic like this, and I thought that must be the cool way to do it. And then he said he didn't want to trip. And then I remember that's Joe. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much. I'm a loudmouth Italian sales guy, so I don't know how loud I sound on this mic. Am I okay? Should I do this? This is good? Great. All right, thank you. So it is an absolute pleasure of mine to be here tonight. The sequence of events that got me here, I'm going to sprinkle them in a little bit, but it's just absolutely amazing to be a part of a group of people that are trying to do something differently than what they have done in the past, and just the chaos theory of how I got to be here is entertaining at least, right? And so I'm very grateful for it. So what I do want to do is keep an eye on the time and give you the bang for your buck and start going and explain to you what it is that I hope you get out of today. I have 3 goals for you. I want you to gain competitive advantage as a person. I want you to gain competitive advantage as a professional. And I want you to be the person that can go into your organization, however many employees you have, and gain competitive advantage in your industry against your peers. I do this presentation in a lot of different ways, and it's based off of my HR experience and my business sales experience. I think I've done my best to dial into what it is that I'm looking to share with you today, and that is the impact of what stress does. Joe mentioned fear. I love being number 3 after these two because I think I'm going to pull a little bit of it all together. And then what I really want to do is emphasize the very real truth about what's going on as it relates to stress in your brain and why courage is something that needs to be discussed and why you need your net worth is your network, your network is your net worth, because the power is with the people that you know. So a little bit about me. I want to share with you one expectation going forward for the rest of this conversation, and that is that I will offer you absolutely zero original thought. I have not come up with any of the stuff that I'm going to say. What I have done, who here has ever heard of Joe Rogan? Right, so Joe Rogan is a master podcaster. He has one of the most downloaded podcasts in the world. He's also a comedian. And years and years and years ago, I saw Joe do stand-up, and he wound up telling the audience that he felt like he was never the smart guy in the room. And because of that, what he would do all the time is listen to really smart people and then do what they did, because to him, that made a lot of sense. And that's where I come from. I've had the pleasure of spending a lot of time with a lot of smart people, and I've learned a lot. I've wrote things down, I've paid attention, and at the end of the day, that's my hope to share that with you. I also am not here to sell you anything. I feel absolutely compelled to say that because for the last 20 years, I've been a paid salesperson working for some of the world's most progressive software companies, literally the largest in the world. And what the pleasure that I got out of doing that was that I always learned. I learned as much as I possibly could because they were willing to teach it. However, it wasn't until about 3.5 years ago where I started to really dial in on learning. And that was when I learned what it was like to be a divorcee. And I had 2 kids. I was a single dad. And what I was really learning was that my life absolutely impacts my work. And because of that, I was disrupted in every kind of direction. But I've always been an optimistic kind of guy. When I was 14, I read Napoleon Hill's How to Win Friends and Think and Grow Rich. And then I read Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. And out of those 2 books, I took 2 values. There's a whole bunch of value in those books, but 2 of them stay with me up until this very moment. Positive mental attitude and the law of attraction. Show of hands, how many people here know about the law of attraction? All right. I'll give you an example for those of you that don't know. Law of attraction could be defined as one day I was driving in the car with my kids a few months after my ex-wife had moved out. Because of the way that my life was impacting my work, I'm in sales. I was disengaged. When you're disengaged, you are not closing deals. So every Friday, I was waiting for that phone call. Keith, you're not closing deals. But I was driving in the car a few months later, and I was with my kids, literally saying to them, guys, Dad's got a plan. We're going to figure all this out. Knowing that I don't need the details, because I'm not really a detail kind of guy. It makes me feel better when I say that. But I had the idea that it was going to work out. And as I said that, the phone rang. And that phone, on the other side of the phone was a recruiter. And that recruiter had told me 2 things. 1, a colleague of mine recommended that she talk to me. And 2, she had an open position for a local position here in the Lehigh Valley, so I didn't have to travel. I could be with my boys. What the recruiter didn't know is I knew the owners of the company she worked for. And for 5 years, they were recruiting me to be a branch manager for them. But in the midst of fear and uncertainty, it was right in front of me, and the damn peas covered it up. So before I knew it, I had a job. I was getting paid well. I had my boys. I was there. And what I didn't know, and what I would soon find out, is that I'd be working 11 to 11 half-hour days, and that my boss and his boss fall into the category of not a good match. And I was not enjoying it. You know that whole seesaw thing? Life-work integration, or I'm sorry, work-life balance, right? Well, I was work down and life up. And part of that job was going out every week and meeting 12 to 20 people. There's a lot I don't know how easy that might be for you, but let me tell you, going from enterprise software, where I'm talking to global companies, where it's very dialed in and not expected to be rushed, this was a whole new life. So I hustled, and I did everything I could because, hey, I had to work, and I wasn't really too concerned about life yet. However, every time I sat down with people, no matter what they did, we'd start to talk about different things with work, right? Because you don't want to walk in as a sales guy and start selling. Nobody wants to do that. But what wound up happening is we'd get to a conversation, and more often than not, we'd start talking about this thing called work-life balance. How many people here ever heard of work-life balance? Okay. So then you know that work-life balance is really work getting in the way of your life. And when you put the two of them together, you don't feel balanced at all. Right? Okay, so now I'm talking to all the levels. Owners, C-levels, manufacturing, high-tech, medical, healthcare, I'm everywhere. Everyone I met, most everyone I met had some level of unhappiness. I would ask them all the time, how are you, how are things? How are you doing? And they responded by saying, I'm busy. And I'm not sure if you knew this, but emotions, busy isn't one of them. And so I started to just drill in and drill in and drill in, and I wound up realizing that most people that I met, most people that were working, were somewhat unhappy. See, the interesting part to me was that I could relate to them because I was out of balance, but I was not unhappy. What I was doing, tip number one, I just gave it away. Tip number one, takeaway number one. YouTube. Well, Chris, you warned me. YouTube. You're listening to a person, you've taken time out of your busy schedule to listen to a person who has not watched the news since 2011. Tip number one, stop watching the news. I almost cursed. Take 15 minutes a week. That's all I ask. Take 15 minutes a week, and when you're about to watch the news, or if the news is on, shut it off, set a timer. Go to YouTube, and because I say, hey, Google, not Siri. Hey, Google, show me something I can learn from, and see what comes up. Trust the law of attraction. And you'd be amazed with what happened, because while I was busting my butt, working for people that were the most stringent, and I'm just going to end it there, guys I've ever worked for, I was feeling incredibly happy. I was feeling incredibly in control, because by some crazy way of chance, and I'm going to call that the chaos theory, actually I'm going to call it the law of attraction. I was learning from incredible people. I was learning about Eastern philosophy, Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, and these philosophies taught about self-love, compassion, patience, appreciating the present moment. And at the very same time, I was learning that. I was learning about modern day technology, the kind of stuff that I'm going to share with you that is designed to blow your mind in a good way. And what I was seeing was that this thousands and thousands of year old philosophy was being redefined and validated through science. And so while I was doing all of this work and my life was manageable, I was developing these core functions that I call life-work integration. And part of the life-work integration, so here we go, life-work integration. Because I didn't come up with this term. Life-work integration is something somebody else made up. I don't think it's copyrighted, I hope not, or trademarked. But the reason why I thought of it sitting in my sunroom was that I think life should be in front of work. I think life is more important than work. And because of that, and because I'm a simple guy, I think life-work makes sense better than work-life balance. And because I sold software for 20 years, I know integration is the free-flowing exchange of energy and ideas between at least two systems. And so life-work integration is the free-flowing exchange of energy between your life and your work. See, there's a funny thing about this work-life balance seesaw, right? Work down, life up. We've all heard it. We've all experienced it. But the truth of the matter is to hold that seesaw completely horizontal takes an incredible amount of stress. And any system, whether it's a bridge, a body, or a mind, will break if it's enduring stress for too long. And so, since you know more about work-life balance, I'm going to talk a little bit more in those contexts, because if you think about the way stress works, why is it there? How in the world did it get there? Who are we? It's there for survival, right? That's how we got here. The one thing that we humans do very, very well is survive. And so what I want you to do is think about what it would be like if you were a gazelle surviving out in the middle of the safari. Try to feel the warm air. Try to hear the grass. Take a little bit of time and think about it. You're at peace, you're at harmony with the environment around you. And then you hear it, or then you feel it, because you're in the environment, you feel it. And all of a sudden, you're off to the races. I know, Erica, I'm sorry. You don't know. See, what happens is the gazelle takes off. Gone. What is that gazelle's brain doing? It's going into flight or fight. And the gazelle knows to fly, to go. That's what our brain does. That's what our inherent survival characteristic is to do, is to go out there and get fight or flight, to move out of danger. But what happens with the gazelle is that the gazelle will wind up coming to a complete, the gazelle gets away, Erica. 15 minutes later, that gazelle is back to being harmonious with the environment around it. It's drinking water. It may have found its herd. The gazelle is completely back at peace, a natural part of Earth, just like we are. Funny thing about us humans, though, we can induce stress with the thought. We don't need a tiger. We don't need a saber-toothed tiger. And we are absolutely addicted to thinking. And so now if you think about the way your world is and all of the elements around it, if you continue to do that and you don't work on changing the things you're looking at, you will always see it right in front of you. You will always find fear. You will always be in a stress mode. Now, an amazing thing that took place in the 90s was extreme sports. And remember, for those of you who were around, there was the Red Bull team, and people started snowboarding, and things got crazy. Well, there's a guy named Steven Kotler who's a writer. And what Steven Kotler did was lie about being an extreme sports guy. And he wound up getting a job reporting what extreme sports people were doing. And they were jumping 90 feet over cliffs on snowboards, never before seen. And because Steven is a writer and not a snowboarder, he would break his body. And so he would go to the hospital for 4 months. And then he would come back, and those 90 feet turned into 360 feet. And he was trying to figure out what was going on. And at the very same time in the 90s, George H. Bush dumped a ton of money into brain research. And what started happening was the Flow Genome Project, which is what Steven Kotler and Jamie Wheel do in California now, reverse-wired, reverse-engineered brainwave activity. And they reverse-engineered something called flow state. And I'm going to get to flow state in a little bit. Here's a little fun thing. I didn't have a lot of cheering out kind of thing going, but here's one thing I want everybody in the room to say. Me high, chick sent me high. Me high, chick sent me high. Me high, chick sent me high. There was no way I was going to be able to pronounce it unless I broke it down. And now you all know how to pronounce the name of the man who discovered and advanced flow. This man was the chairman of the University of Chicago in the 70s and the 80s. He traveled the entire world. He wanted to find out what it was regarding anybody in any profession, when it was that they felt and performed at their best level. And no matter the nationality, no matter what the job, and no matter, I mean, we're talking about like sheep herders, and we're talking about professional sports athletes. Everybody basically said the same thing. They said that one thought flowed right to the next. It was zero resistance. And so flow was created. And if you have a seizure issue, I'm sorry about this next one. But when we talk about that radar going off all the time, looking for fear, and I'll put it out there. See that? Putting it out there. The news is full of it. So start there. I keep going back to it. I'm going to give you more stuff to do too if you're addicted to news. But with the way that your mind works, do you remember when you grew up, I grew up, everyone said that we only use 10% of our brain? Right? You ever hear that? Turns out they were dead wrong. The gig isn't to use more of your brain. The gig is to use less of your brain, to calm your brain, to quiet your brain. And it's called transient hypofrontality. And what happens is, when you reach transient hypofrontality, that inner critic in your mind goes away. Your brain literally switches into full functioning flow. And the most amazing thing about flow, it is as natural as the air you breathe and the blood that flows through your body. What they've been able to discover with science, this is not, I'll say it, I got millennial friends, it's cool. And they make fun of me because they kind of, they're like the guinea pigs. They make fun of me, but then they come back and they're like, so what else have you been doing? What else have you been doing? And I said something about science and research, and they're like, ooh, science, research, data, great, right? Like I have to pull out I literally have to like pull out like the actual website to convince these kids. But the truth of the matter is they've been able to discover, and these are not my thoughts, these are other people's thoughts, folks. Placebo effect is a real thing. Everyone here know what the placebo effect is? Oh, so everyone knows it. Okay, so if you want to tell your friends, you heard me say it. Essentially, the chemical influence of any kind of pharmaceutical does not at all exceed that of what it is your mind thinks that you're doing. In other words, they have like, what's the big one? There is one out there now, it escapes me. They basically did all the studies, they brought it back, and 35% of the people they took the sugar pill. 35% didn't do anything, and the other remaining actually took the pill. And they didn't have any quantifiable data to suggest. And you could, if you actually do it, you could listen to it and watch it on, I hear there are pharmaceutical commercials on TV. You could look at, you could see it. The placebo effect makes it, it's a mind thing. So if you realize the way that your brain works is related to the way you're thinking, and if you're thinking about the thing being bad, it's going to be bad. And you talked about, I tell in other groups, the law of attraction. It's got a whole bunch of names. What you give into it, you get out. What goes around comes around. Karma, the universe, God, all of it. It's there. It's real. What we've been able to discover with the use of technology and the microscope is that by harnessing different components of the way your mind works, aligning it with breathing, because you do that naturally, you will be able to move lower frequency emotions like fear, uncertainty, and doubt. You literally can slowly breathe them up to the higher frequencies. And this may sound a little bit odd, but I could prove to all of you, you've done it before. You ready? Who here wants to believe that you can flip your brain in an instant? Raise your hand if you ever fell in love. What happened? Oh, you forgot what you were doing. You couldn't think. Your entire brain switched on you, right? That's the greatest experience that I could offer you in terms of creating a habit that gives you flow all the time, that gives you the ability to constantly live the life that you want because you're raising your energy, you're bringing it forward into the universe, and because that's all you see, that's all you get. My life work integration program is basically designed as follows, and there's more of this coming in the breakout session. The interesting part of everything I ever heard out there about self-improvement and becoming a better person is that people stand on a stage and they say, self-improvement, better person. And then they say, read my book. And the problem is that when you read a book, it stays in your conscious mind, not your subconscious. And because it's not in your subconscious is where all of your habits are. And again, there's more details to come with life work integration, but the truth of the matter is, unless you're harnessing your subconsciousness, you are not going to change your habit. So what I bring to everyone's attention is to get to a place where you're balanced in a neutral place, not a work-life balance stress place. The first step you need to do is know what you want. And it's easy said, right? Everybody says, oh, you gotta know what you want. Just do what you want. Live a life you want. Here's my challenge to you. Tip number 2, ask yourself why you want that 5 times. I want a new job. Okay, why? Well, because, I don't know, I want to make more money. Why? Well, because making more money makes things better. Why does that happen? Get to number 5, and then ask yourself, what have I learned? You're going to start to uncover the fact that you don't know what you want, which is a hard pill to swallow. But here's the good news. Not knowing what you want is the other side of the coin that tells you what you want. And so now you start to see things differently. You start to accept the fact that maybe, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to be with that one person. I don't want to be in this situation. And because it's constantly in your mind, because you're taking the time to notice it, you're moving out of not knowing what you want into the idea of what do I want to do next. And so what winds up happening is you go from I don't know what I want to I know what I don't want. And after that, you go to I know what I do want. And now the fun comes. Because now you're harnessing technology, a belief system in yourself that's literally led by crazy ideas like compassion, empathy, self-love, patience, present moment, appreciation, and you are there. And then after that, you start to realize you can calm yourself down, you can slow your breath down, and now you get into what the science says is the deep now. And you can reprogram your subconscious brain that enables you the ability to keep going in the direction you want. And again, if you recall the beginning of this, and Joe happened to be there, I wanted to do everything that I explained to you in my past. It took me 5 months to be here. I could have never, ever planned it. Could I? No. And based off of what's going on, I'm probably going to come back, right? And there's going to be updates. I am doing what I'm doing because I believe it works, because it keeps working. And the technology is there, the belief system is there, the data is there. If you truly want to live a life that you truly deserve, you don't have to watch TV. You don't have to listen to people that you don't like. You don't have to have the job you want or have. You don't have to have the marriage or the relationship you want. You can make the change. All you have to do is ask yourself, why am I here 5 times? Ask yourself again what it is I learned. My third favorite question is, how can I help? And here's the kicker. The kicker is question number 4. What is the specific next step that I should take? And it could be as simple as this. Right now, my specific next step is to drink some water, because I'm a little parched. It's not complicated, people. And I'll leave you with this. My favorite thought, somebody else's great idea. It is truly remarkable how often we forget that it just takes 2 to 3 people to start doing something a little differently, and you can change the world. As a matter of fact, according to Margaret Mead, it's the only thing that ever has. Thank you.
Let's give a round for Keith, Joe, and Michaela. Awesome. Thank you so much. So now we're going to move to the breakout session portion of the evening. We do have 9 different sessions. If everyone can just take a look at the back of the sheet here that you received when you walked in, the Meet the Leaders. The breakout sessions are located on the back. Now, when you walk outside the door here, you're going to see what room each breakout session is in. But I'm very quickly going to go down the list and tell you what room each one is in. Turning Stress is in room number 6. Secure the Right Financial Plan is in room number 8, if you want to write these down. Girl Boss, Women in the Workplace, room number 2. Design Thinking and Problem Solving, number 5. The Entrepreneurial Psyche, number 7. Understanding Burnout, room number 4. Why Simply Sells, room number 9. Impact of Unbossed Empowerment, that's in room number 1. And then Leadership Training 101 is in room number 3. So at this time, if everybody wants to quickly grab a snack, grab something, a snack to eat, and then go to your room, we will have the breakout sessions for exactly a half hour, returning here at 8 o'clock for our last few speakers.
And just wanted to add, so we have like a paper up with the room numbers. So they're all the way from like the left to the right. So it might take you a minute or 2 to find your room, but you can look for a paper with the room number on the door to the side. So thank you. See you in a bit.
Go do it.
All right, everyone, please take your seats. We're going to get started again. again. That was some great discussion in our breakouts. I think most everyone was deep in discussion. We didn't want to stop, which is awesome to see that. So we're going to get back started, and here's Aurora, our MC.
Woo! Welcome back, everybody. So the vibe in here is just so awesome. Is everybody having a good time? Nice. I'm just hearing a lot of conversation of people saying, this has been so cool. I'm so excited you guys did this. How do I get more information about this, about that? So just thank you all for coming, and please be sure to share your feedback with us, because I think we're on to something here, and I know that we're going to want to do something similar in the future. So now that you've had your breakout sessions, we're going to move forward to our next few speakers. So I am going to ask Cassandra Stahl to come on up to the stage. Cassandra is a senior lead financial advisor for the Clinton Financial Group, affiliated with Northwestern Mutual. Third generation in the industry, Cassandra is passionate about helping families and business owners create intergenerational wealth. Cassandra is an incredible speaker, leader, and knows how to get awesome results. A graduate of Muhlenberg College, she lives with her husband, Matt, in the west end of Allentown, and they're expecting their first child in February 2020. Thank you for being with us.
All right, hello everyone. Thanks for staying. Thanks for being here. I know that it's Thursday night. I'm sure that there are a few places that we all feel that we could have been. So I'm thankful that for whatever reason we've all decided to end up in the same room and try to invest in ourselves and make a good productive night of it. Thank you so much for having me. To Erica and her team, just a phenomenal job putting this together. It's just a really great example for everybody. I'm going to talk tonight about leadership and advocacy and how to make sure that we're just putting those to the top of our priority list to better ourselves, better the people that we love and care about, and the communities that we invest in every day. To me, leadership is kind of like being the rally bird. I think I might be one of the only people that says, does anyone know what a rally bird is? All right, so think about it this way. When you see birds fly, they fly in all these cool patterns and they're doing all these beautiful things. And I always think about, there's a bird that started that, is like, let's go, guys. So be that bird and just know that your people are behind you. And there's a lot about that leap of faith. And I think that so much about leadership is just knowing what you and your flock are destined to do and kind of flying off the telephone line first, I suppose. So this is exciting. I was really grateful when Erica gave me the call and wanted me to discuss this. So it's interesting, this is kind of looped in with career development here. When I found out what this event was really all about and that I was to speak on leadership, I immediately recalled a survey that I was looking at actually in preparation for another talk I did in New Orleans last year about feeling fulfilled and happy, like what leads to happiness in people's careers. And what's interesting is it ranked a few factors in level of importance to the people that were surveyed, and the first four went like this. So number one was feeling like they were living a purposeful life, so feeling fulfilled by what they were doing at work. Number two was feeling like they were an added valued member of a team, that they were working in cooperation with people. Third most important to people that led to happiness and longevity in their careers was actually all about making sure that they had a positive work environment, a positive work culture that they felt really good about showing up to every day. And number four, after all those first three, is how much money they made. And that, to me, especially, I'm a financial planner, right? So I talk about money all day. It was surprising, but made so much sense. If you're going out and you're chasing the dollar signs and you're chasing wealth and you're chasing all these material things, those are all nice, but it's not it. And I think that if our society really values money so greatly that it's really tough to keep that in perspective and know that it's not a coincidence that those top three landed. It's all about purpose. It's about feeling good about what you're doing and living a life of intention. And by virtue of that, you will be able to be a high income earner and live the lifestyle that you want. Without that, if you're just chasing number four on that list, in my opinion, you have reached the worst kind of failure there is, which is success without fulfillment. virtue of that, be a productive member of society, and I promise the money follows. All the business owners that I have the immense pleasure of working with, that's what we see, is it starts with the dream and just feeling really good about what you're doing, and it somehow, it works out. If you have pure heart, pure intention, it does work out. So, let's talk a little bit about leadership and how I got into this. I've always had a passion for helping people in uncertain situations. Even as a child, I kind of felt like that was where I thrived, is taking an uncertain, stressful situation and helping to infuse some certainty to find a resolve there. Learning about the situation, learning how I could help, and really acting on that, which is no coincidence. That's why I ended up in the financial services industry, which is the #1 cause of stress in the United States. So I ended up doing that. I started in my practice actually just as a sophomore in college. I was 19, and I kind of had the idea that I think I'm going to do this forever. And I feel so fortunate that I didn't think too hard about it, because I scooped ice cream in high school. I was a creamery engineer is what I told the people. Skronski's Milkhouse, if you're in New Jersey, check it out. I was an employee then and literally have not been an employee since, so I'm really thankful I didn't give that one too much thought, because I'm so immensely blessed that I grew up in an environment where following your purpose, following the pull, what pulls you through life as opposed to pushing, I was always very much so encouraged to go after that thing. So when I felt as purposeful and intentional and fulfilled by the work I was doing in my practice, it was kind of a no-brainer to go through it. And I think that my life had been the greatest lesson in leadership for me at that point, because that's what it is creating an environment where people can feel encouraged to thrive. That's really all that it is. That's how you lead yourself, it's how you lead others. So I feel like I've been given the gift, just by virtue of the support and love that I've been able to feel in my life and the success I've been able to see at a young age, to go farther faster. And I was just thinking about with my husband, actually, what are the differences, and what are the pillars of success and leadership that kind of move the line there? We came up with 3 things. To be an appropriate leader and to really foster real change in our world, first you have to advocate for yourself, right? You've got to start with you. If you're not leading you, you're not leading anybody, right? We have to be able to start with ourselves. Then, once you've done that, let's advocate for others. Let's create a community around you, and I think that at that point, it's your moral obligation to help other people rise and grow, right? Let's make sure we're doing that. And then third and finally, let's create and advocate for the future that we want together. Let's create an environment and a global community that we're going to be really proud for our children and grandchildren to grow up in, and future generations. So to talk a little bit about advocating for yourself first, this is something that as a child, I think I was really, really great at. I wasn't really waiting on anyone to tell me I could do anything. If I was going to do it, I was going to do it now. And I just had this incredible sense of certainty. And it was so interesting as life progressed and I got farther into my business and things like that. It got harder, actually. I don't know if anyone else here can relate to that. It got more difficult to have that kind of cohesive sense of certainty. And I got a real wake-up call, to be honest with all of you, last November, and I'm just incredibly grateful for. So I was at an event and I was about to do a fire walk that night. Anyone here done a fire walk? Oh, good. I'm the only psycho. Okay, good. All right, cool. So a fire walk, for those of you that aren't familiar, is exactly what it sounds like. It's a lane of 16 feet of hot coals. You walk on it. No shoes, obviously. And guys, I know how to do it, obviously, because I still have feet. So, fire walking is something that I've had the privilege of doing several times in my life. November was just the most recent one, actually. So when you're doing a fire walk, there's several people that help you get across the coals. If you guys get the chance, it's a beautiful, beautiful experience, because the first time you do it, you're actually unaware of most of the people that are there helping you. And it's phenomenal. So the person that I've always regarded as the most important is, if I'm standing here and my lane of coals is ahead of me, there's somebody that's right here that tells me when to go. So the way that you do an appropriate fire walk is you get yourself into a strong, confident state, and that is actually what allows your mind to control what you're about to experience. Because the reality is if you're visualizing something, your mind actually can't differentiate between what you vividly imagine and what's actually happening to you. So the way you do a firewalk is you look up and you chant cool moss the whole time, and it feels kind of crunchy and cool under your feet. It's a crazy experience. But regardless, there's somebody that's going to stand right here and is going to tell you when you're good to go. They're going to assess your physiology, assess your state, and they're going to tell you when you're good to go. The person that was going to do that for me that night was named Pam, and she was somebody that I had the privilege of having a relationship with for a few years at that point. We knew each other pretty well. So I saw her earlier in the day, and I said, hey, Pam, you're not going to let me burn my feet off tonight, right? And she kind of laughed off and said, yeah, no, we're going to be good. I said, all right, you tell me when to go. I'll go. We're going to have a great firewalk. She said, yeah, we're going to have a great firewalk, but you don't need me. I said, Pam, I really need you. You tell me when to go, we're good to go. And she kind of gave me a sideways look, and we moved on from there. And I thought about that for the rest of the day, guys. I thought, wow, is this my last day with feet? Who knows? Sure enough, I get to the front of that line. You're in state, and I've now watched Pam for probably 1,000 people say, go, go, go. So she's now giving everybody the green light, what I expected her to do for me. And when I got to the front of the line, Pam, all like 5'1" of her, just stood there and went, you know when to go. You know who you are. You know when to go. And it was the most terrifying and amazing moment of my life doing that firewalk. I had already done it several times before, but that was by far the best because the respect that Pam had for us and our relationship and for me and herself as a leader was just absolutely beautiful in that moment because she put to the test advocating for myself. This is something I know I've devoted so much of my life to having my mind govern my experience, to learning everything that I can about personal growth. And I had done several firewalks before. I knew how to do this. So why was I waiting for Pam to tell me to go? I know when to go. And I'm so thankful that she required me in that moment to advocate for myself. No, you know how to do this. So let's loop back into leadership and what we're all talking about here tonight. If you have something that you're called to do, that you know you can do, that you know really just calls on the most best, beautiful skills that you're blessed with, don't seek permission to do it. Just go. Do exactly what Pam really required of me to do in that moment and really just take hold of all of those skills and be the rally bird. Be the one that flies off first. And if it looks crazy, you're probably doing something really cool that everyone else wishes that they were too. So whatever your purpose is, do that with enthusiasm, do that with intention, and you're not going to lose. I'm not telling you it'll always be comfortable, but you're not going to lose. And that's the first step in leading yourself. Once you can lead and advocate for yourself, now we're going to move on to the second, which is advocating for each other, of making sure that our community gets to rise together, because that's really what it's all about. You guys aren't single-minded, selfish people, or you wouldn't be here, and you certainly wouldn't have waited for the second wave of main stage speakers tonight. You would be home. The Patriots are beating someone, I'm sure. Well, in 4 minutes, the Patriots will be beating somebody, I'm sure. So let's advocate for each other. Now, here's the thing, and Keith brought up so much of this, which is really, really cool. I swear, we don't know each other. We are wired for synergy, right? If we talk about, like, back to the hunter-gatherer days, we are wired for synergy. We are wired to be able to create these communities. If you think about that, it's like the most primitive of times, right? We can't even intelligently communicate with each other, yet we're figuring out how to feed communities, how to protect communities, build structures. It's kind of phenomenal. If you think about our 2-million-year-old software is wired to connect. It's our greatest biological advantage. That is what differentiates us from dogs and birds and fish and all of them, is we have this leg up. We are wired to connect with people. We are wired to help each other up. So why do we feel like sometimes, I don't know about you, I'm walking through Wegmans, I'm like, man, I feel like I'm the only person here. Like, you don't feel that connection. It's rare that we get to be in a room like this where you feel that ultimate sense of connection. And the reason is this 2-million-year-old software that's wired for connection is also wired to raise red flags for things that are different sometimes, right? Because think about it. If the bush looks a little bit different and we're back in the hunter-gatherer days, that might mean there's a tiger behind it waiting to kill you and your family. Or if the berries look different, it might be because they're poisonous, right? So we're wired for that. As much as it's for synergy, it's for protection as well. And what we need to do is realize it is 2019. When I go to Wegmans, while it's scary sometimes, there's no tigers, I don't think any of the food there is poisonous. I go there a lot. I'd be definitely dead by now. So we need to relieve ourselves of that. As we've evolved in so many beautiful ways as the human race, it's time for us to realize, as a leader, right, you're able to advocate for yourself. Advocate for people that are doing the same thing, that are stepping into their own rightful life, that are living a beautiful life of intention, and they're clearly trying to figure it out. They've decided, I'm going to get off the gerbil wheel of life. I'm going to do my thing. It's really time that we get past this software that's still a little outdated, millions of years outdated, and we can move past that to celebrating those differences and encouraging that and helping those people rise in our wake. Because at the end of the day, humans want to know two things. If you feel like, and I have definitely felt this way in my life, I don't know enough to lead them. I don't really know enough about what they're doing. There are two questions that plague humanity, really. It is, am I enough? And will I be loved? Everyone just wants to know, am I loved? Am I enough? And that's it. If you can give somebody the gift of creating that environment, ask them questions, learn about them, understand. You don't need to be an expert in what they're doing, but I promise you can help them if you can make them understand those two things. Just by showing up as their authentic self, they are loved, they are enough, and when you give them that grace, they will live a life of purpose, and you're now a huge part of their journey all of a sudden. That's a beautiful thing, and something that, unfortunately, we don't see enough today, but that's why we all are here, to make sure that we can continue that. So lastly here, guys, create the future. I am creating the future actively right now. It's why I had to pee before my breakout session, so sorry I was late, everyone. Also why my mom packed me a sandwich for this specific event. So going back to very early in my career, somebody gave me a card that said, much is required to whom much is given. And that was something that I don't think I understood the gravity of it, and I still don't think I understand the gravity of what that will mean in my life and in my professional and personal practices every day. But we're all here because we want to be leaders in some respect. We want to improve ourselves in some respect. It's imperative that we can have those words right, and I do my absolute best. There are days that aren't perfect. Actually, none of them are perfect, but I'm going to do my absolute best every day that I've got here to live by those words and to pay it forward. As my ultimate vision is that an event like this, where like you feel this cool energy in this room, should be felt in line at Dunkin' Donuts. Like this should be kind of weird if people look back and say, they had to go there to assemble this community. This should be a global community. My vision for the future is that that's what the world looks like. And yeah, I pray that it can happen quickly, but even if it's generations from now, it's got to start somewhere. The evolution has to start somewhere, and it comes from leading yourself, leading others. And I just think about in the metaphorical firewalk of all of our lives, right? When we're really stepping out on the edge, we're doing our thing, and we're really living a life of purpose. I really hope that everybody can take that first step with confidence. I hope that that's how everyone feels in their life. And if they can't, I hope one of your hands is on their shoulders, encouraging them along the way. That's, I think, what real leadership is. So thank you guys so much for coming out. Thank you, everybody here. Have a good night.
Thank you so much, Cassandra. Now, there are so many amazing things we've talked about tonight, but raise your hand if you're going to Google search firewalking when you go home. I know my husband already Googled it while we're sitting there, so that's what I'll be doing next weekend. So next up for our next speaker, we have Joe Velarde. Joe, come on up. Joe is from Atlanta, Georgia, and moved to the Lehigh Valley in 2014. He has been married to his wife, Amy, for 15 years, and they have a 3-year-old son. He started Riverbend Community Church in 2009. He, along with the Riverbend team, have helped start 6 new churches in Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, and Denmark through the Riverbend Planning Network. Joe launched the Vision of the Lehigh Valley podcast in 2019. Here's Joe.
Thank you so much. Well, just so you're clear, I'm not the guy that owns the Chick-fil-A in Whitehall. All right, because I've been confused with him a couple of times. Even tonight, someone was like, "Aren't you the owner of Chick-fil-A Whitehall?"
And it actually is my identical twin brother who owns the Chick-fil-A. Wow, that's a true story. I'm not making that up. His name's John, but we look very much alike, and so I get that often. It works to my favor and my advantage oftentimes, but times I'll be out, like I was at the DMV recently, and someone was like, "Hey man, how you doing?" And they're starting to talk to me, and I'm realizing, you think I'm my brother. So we just keep this conversation going, and we're having a great time doing that. But it's fun having my brothers. Actually, both of them moved up here, and in fact, I actually moved to the Valley in 2004 from the Atlanta area, and it's just been awesome to watch even tonight happen and to be a part of what's going on here, to have a vision for the Valley. And so what I wanted to do tonight is I wanted to talk to you guys about encouraging the encouragers. I want to talk to you about this because this is something that is very important to us all, and we all desire it because encouragement gives us the courage to continue on. It's like oxygen for our souls, and we all need it. And as I think about my own life, the reason why this is such a value to who I am and what I do is because I had so many people in my life come alongside me and encourage me. They encouraged me to continue on. They encouraged me that the odds that were stacked against me didn't have to define me, but rather could be overcome by the help of others. The gaps of what I wasn't, people would call me forward to be who I could be, even when I wasn't living up to that potential at that point in time. And I think about several people that I could mention, but one is my special ed teacher, Annette Tucker. And as I think about when I was in high school, I was not a great high school student at all. I was the guy that was coming from a situation where my dad was not a part of my life. He had come and then he had left again, but he was not involved. And not only was that happening, but my mom was trying to raise these 3 hyperactive boys on her own, and she had some challenges as well. She had some mental illness that was part of our family story that made it very difficult. And I'll never forget in high school, she tried to take her life, and visiting her after that point. But as a high school student, this really wrecked me and produced in me a lot of anger and confusion and just fear. And oftentimes we act out of those things that we're experiencing. A lot of times people say, why do they do what they do? But there's a story behind why they're doing what they do. And so by the time I was a freshman in high school, I had a probation officer. And so I had a probation officer my freshman year of high school and my sophomore year of high school. And my probation officer would come to the school and visit me and check on me to see how I was doing, because I had so much in-school suspension and out-of-school suspension, and I just had so much that was going on in my life. And so she was trying to make sure I was staying on track and on the right course. But even in the midst of having her, when I broke probation, she would let me know about it. And there was a night where I had broken probation, and the next morning, knock, 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 knock. And it wasn't my friends, it was the popo. And the police came, and they handcuffed me and my identical twin brother, took us in the cop car, and we spent a night in juvie. And this is part of the story that makes us who we are. But it's people like Mrs. Tucker who didn't give up on us. People like her who said, hey, I know that the way you learn is different than other students, but you need to learn how you learn and take advantage of it, because it can be an asset to you if you won't allow it to hold you back, but rather be something that you can take advantage of. And not only that, but to call me forward to what I wasn't. You know, she would say, there's a kindness about you. You know, there's going to be big things that happen in your life. I'll never forget her buying me for graduation the Dr. Seuss book, The Places You'll Go. And she really believed that. She really believed that. And to this day, me and Mrs. Tucker keep in touch. You know, she took time to invest in me and to walk the halls of my high school with me and to say, hey, it seems like you need to get out of the class because you're having a hard time focusing. And I'm so grateful for her. But to this day, she writes little notes to me on social media. I'm so proud of you and your brother and this the work that's happening in your life. And recently, I had a chance to go back and teach one of her classes and to share the story of what it was that I experienced and what I'm doing now. And I'm getting to go back in November to share again. And she loves to have me and my identical twin brother come back. I know it's hard to believe after everything I just told you. But she likes to have us back because it's in that they give a picture for what could be for their own lives. But we all need people like Mrs. Tucker. We all need people to come alongside us. We all need to encourage and be encouraged as well. And so this is why it's a passion of mine, because I personally experienced it. I experienced it in my own life. And I think there's such a void and a gap for encouragement. And so I want us to look at why we don't encourage. You know, why we don't encourage. What is it in our lives that hold us back from doing that? And so here's a couple of things about why we don't encourage. The first is this: we believe that we are self-made. We believe that we are self-made. We forget all the people who've invested in us. It's so easy to go through your life and think, I arrived where I'm at on my own. But that's not true. There's tons of Mrs. Tuckers in our own story, you know, and in our own journeys that we've gone through. And that's just only one person out of like 100 people I could probably mention who have taken the time to invest and encourage me. So we need to remind ourselves, who are the people who poured into me? Who are the people that had the courage to encourage me to continue on when I wanted to give up, when I was making poor choices, when they didn't shame me or allow pride and fear to overtake them to then give up on me, but rather said, hey, I want you to know what could be. I want you to know what I can see in you. So don't forget all the people that poured into you, because again, we don't encourage because we believe that we are self-made. The other part of this is that we are unaware of what is going on around us. Recently had a leader confide in me who just recently lost a family member. And I went purposely to this person's line of work, and they work in the food service industry, so just to let you know, it's not a stalking kind of thing going on here, right? Rolling into someone's office complex, you know, like, hey. But anyways, I saw this person, and I purposely wanted to talk to them because I wanted to see how they were doing. And I said, hey, how are you doing? Because I know this season has been really difficult. It's been stressful with the work here, and then you lost your brother. And he was just saying, you know, I wish more people would ask. But it's so easy to get preoccupied with ourselves in our own lives and what's going on. It's so easy to be distracted by our smartphones, and they are a gift for sure, but they can cause us to lose sight of the people right in front of us. They can become a barrier. And I just loved in that moment to be able to speak words of life over this young man and to remind him of his value and significance and to be able to pray with him. And that meant the world to him. But as I think about that, in our own lives, including my own, I can get so preoccupied and so busy with everything else that's going on that I miss the people right in front of me. And we want to be careful not to do that. And then the other part of this is we're afraid. How many of you get afraid that if you say something encouraging to somebody else, it's going to be perceived the wrong way? Show of hands. Anybody feel that way? You're like, it's going to get awkward. It's going to get awkward. It's going to get weird. Can I just say, embrace the awkward, embrace the weird? We need more of that. We need more people being willing to say, I'm going to be responsible for my response and not somebody else's response. I'm going to choose to do what I know is right and what will bring life to this person. Even if they look at me weird, even if it gets awkward, even if they deflect, right? You know, like they're like, I don't know about that. I'm like, well, good. I didn't ask you, right? I didn't ask what you thought about it. I'm just telling you. I didn't ask you your opinion on it. I'm just telling you what I see. And so oftentimes we don't encourage because of these reasons. So as we look at that, why would we encourage? Why encourage? And here's one of the things we've heard throughout the evening. People matter most. No matter what you do, no matter if you're an employer or an employee, the reality is we are all in the people business. And don't you ever forget that. We are all in the people business. It's all about people. And so many times we can lose sight of that. But people matter most. They matter most. The other part of this is to be kind. For everyone you meet is battling a hard battle. You know, as I think about my own story and my own journey, The reality and the truth is, that's just only one part of it growing up. But as I've gone through my life and I've seen all kinds of things and experienced all kinds of things, there are times in life where it's just really, really hard. But then when I talk to other people, I'm reminded that they're going through something that's hard as well. It may not be the same hard, it may not be the same difficult, but it's a hard battle. And we need to understand that in high school, it was all about being cool, right? You maybe remember that? You know, be cool in high school, you know, like all the cool kids. But you know what? As we become adults, you know what wins the day? Kindness. Kindness wins the day. It's about choosing to be kind. And that's a decision that we can all make. And then the other part of this is that your words have the power to impact lives beyond what you can see. You know, so many people spoke words of encouragement and vision over me. Things like, there are big plans for your life. You're a leader. You're a leader. And I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? Like, I'm literally on probation. Like, I have out of school suspension for a couple of days in a row here. I mean, you're saying I'm a leader? And they're like, yes, you are a leader. But our words matter. Our words matter, and so do our actions as well. We need both of those things. But just know that encouragement is free. Do you know it's free? But you know what it takes? It takes intentionality and time, doesn't it? It means that we have to slow down and be purposeful with making margin and space to encourage. We've got to be able to prioritize that in our own lives because we want to give, again, what it is that we have received and what's been given to us. And I know some of us haven't received a lot of encouragement. We haven't received a lot of affirmation. And I loved throughout this evening being reminded of your value, your significance, that you were made on purpose and for a purpose. We heard that again and again and again. We have to affirm that message in ourselves if we ever hope to give it to other people. We're intended to do so. We're intended to do that. So as we think about that, I want to give you some ways that you could really encourage. So how to encourage. So here are a couple of things. Be specific. Be specific. You know, one of the things I have to watch because I like to be a positive person and I like to cheer people on. And I'm just like, man, you're awesome. You killed it. You know, I like to say stuff like that. You know, I say it to my wife a lot. She says, what is it that you think I did awesome on? And why do you think I did awesome? She's a little bit more tangible, right? Like it's not enough to just use a blanket statement. So you need to be specific. We need to be specific about what it is that we're affirming in somebody else, what it is that we see in them, what it is that we appreciated about the work they did on a project, who they are, the value that they've added. Be specific. Eye contact. And I know sometimes people get a little like, this gets a little weird, eye contact, but man, eye contact speaks that you're the priority. I'm not worried about anything else. I got my phone somewhere else. I'm looking straight at you. I'm not behind my laptop. You know, I'm not distracted. I'm looking at you. Eye contact. Written and verbal. One of the things we talk about here at Riverbend and as the staff team, we recently talked about the importance of expressing encouragement and appreciation. And I gave them a couple different ways that you can do this. I said you can write a handwritten note. You can send a text message. You can make a phone call. I know that's crazy, make a phone call, but you can actually make a phone call. It works. The smartphone actually allows you to make a phone call. I know, it's weird. It's just crazy. But the other thing I added in is the ability to take your phone and to make a video message and then send it as a text message. And so that's something I've been recently doing. Just when people are going through something, whether it's a celebration like an anniversary, or someone recently had a family member, their child that was having a minor procedure, I purposely sent a message to them and I prayed over the message and sent it to them. And it took me about 2 minutes to do, but it meant the world to them. It meant the world to them. Because they saw my face, and I'm much better with my words than often writing something out, because I think sometimes it's missed what I'm trying to say. But I wanted them to hear the importance and the priority that they have. And so think about the ways you could do that. Maybe you're going to take somebody out to lunch. Maybe you're going to bring coffee to the office. There's several ways to do that. Be bold, though. Be bold. Don't hold back. It's free. What do you got to lose? What do you got to lose? Be bold. And we heard about courage. Here's one of the things Andy Stanley says. This is a great quote. He says, unspoken gratitude comes off as ingratitude for those whom we are grateful for. So what? What does he say to do? Say it again. I couldn't hear you. Say it one more time. Speak up. So say, as we think about this, oftentimes we assume people know how grateful we are for them. But when we don't say anything, it speaks of ingratitude to them. Ingratitude comes off in a variety of different ways as far as our not communicating it with our words, but even just the assumption that we think people would know that. They would know that we're grateful for them. And we need to get past those assumptions because we all need encouragement. So as we think about this, I want to help you to see what this looks like. So I'm going to ask Erica Butler to stand up. Stand up. You can stand up right here. Give it up for Erica Butler. Erica, I wanted to take a moment to tell you how grateful I am for your boldness to put on this event tonight. I like that, right? I appreciate your tenacity, all the hard work that you put into organizing it, getting the speakers lined up, printing off everything, getting the food, the preparation, every part of this night that you thought through, the intentionality to make it a night that was worth being a part of. And like you've said again and again, you won't leave the same. And I want to tell you how much I appreciate that. We are grateful for you. Let's give it up for Erica. You don't have to say anything, Erica. Just receive that. You receive it, girl. Don't Jesus juke me right now, all right? So as we think about this, here's a couple things I want to say to you, and then I'm done here, is how to stay encouraged. Because it's one thing to say, hey, we're going to encourage each other, encourage the encouragers, but we have to stay encouraged in the midst of that as well. So here's a couple things. My good friends who are here tonight, Tom and Beth Ann Miller, awesome things that they're doing with Safe Place Ministries. They talk about being kind to yourself. Being kind to yourself, because it's so easy to become a self-critic of yourself. The things that you didn't do, the would-haves, the could-haves, the should-haves, regretting what you've done or haven't done, saying things like, I'm such an idiot. These are things that don't speak of kindness. They don't speak of kindness because you didn't know what you know now, right? That's true, right? But I know for myself, I have to be kind to me because there's several things I would have done differently. But I didn't know what I didn't know. So be kind to yourself. The other part is find safe people in a safe place, free of fear, guilt, and shame. We've talked so much about community. You need people to share life with. You need people who are going to remind you who you are, who don't have to say to you when it's time to go in the hot coals, right? But can say, hey, do you know your value? Do you know your significance? Do you remember your worth? We need people to remind us and to be able to share those spaces and things in our lives that we're not necessarily only not proud of, but they're just difficult. They're hard. We need people like that. We need people like that in our lives. The other part is know thyself and be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. Here's the deal. Be the best version of you. And you don't need to compare to somebody else. I know we live in the social media culture, and the reality is the best way, I've heard Craig Rochelle say it so good. He said, the best way to kill something special is to compare it to somebody else or something else. Instead of comparing, why not celebrate who you are and who somebody else is? We're not in competition. I mean, there's a great lineup of speakers, and I get to collaborate with them, but I'm not in competition with them. I'm for them. I'm for you, right? And I think having that kind of mindset is what allows us to reach our potential, and it gives us the power to encourage the people around us. And then the last part of this, and I mentioned this early on, is that you were made on purpose and with a purpose. You matter. Don't forget that. What you do is really important. It's important. But who you are is even more important. What you do, man, it matters. No, I'm not arguing that. We're not debating that. But who you are matters even more. So I want us to say this out loud on 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3. I will have the courage to encourage. Hey, thanks for allowing me to share.
So this is totally unplanned, and I was just sitting in my seat thinking like, yeah, well, Aurora was nice enough to give me the mic. Thanks, Aurora. But the next speaker is actually my father, and I was sitting there thinking like, when am I ever going to have the chance to introduce my father to anything? So I had to take the mic, and I had to take the opportunity. So the next speaker is Dr. Craig Butler, my father, and he is, and I won't make this long, I promise. He is currently the superintendent at the Saucon Valley School District. He has 41 years, I believe, of experience in the education system. He started out as a music teacher and has worked his way up to the superintendent level. And he is just one of the most humble, encouraging, amazing people I know. He's my role model for sure. Truly inspires me all the time. I want to be just like him when I grow up. I can't say enough about my father. Just an incredible, incredible person and leader, and I can't wait for you guys to hear from him. So Dr. Craig Butler, everyone.
I'll take advantage of any chance I have to hug my son. The one thing about getting older, you cry easier. Can some of you relate to that? So he's going to make me emotional. Now, unlike Cassandra, I chose not to visit the restroom for fear that everyone would leave. And I've been to enough conferences to know when you're last, that sometimes happens. Now, I can joke with my daughter-in-law. I'm not sure if I'm the cleanup hitter, the pinch hitter, or the last guy off the bench. I think I got the last guy off the bench. No, I'm just kidding. It's a pleasure to speak with you. I know we're at a late hour, so I'll be brief. My session is navigating a career, your career, my career. So I would like to march through 5 or 6 major segments of my career that I think might be helpful to you folks tonight. I do have a handout for you this evening, and if you're a fill in the blank type of person, my wife, who's sitting next to Travis in the back, said, I think we were at church last weekend. It's so helpful when I can fill in the blank. So I thought, well, with regard to tonight, we'll try it. So I'd like to just go back to earning my bachelor's degree at the University of Arizona. It was completely unintended and accidental that I was able to complete my bachelor's degree in 3.5 years. And I did that by going to summer school, but I never really planned to finish before the 4-year period. But by the time I was kind of in my junior year, it looked like it could happen and become a reality. So I kind of jumped into fast gear and finished in 3.5 years. And one thing I told Kathleen is that in order for us to get married, I had to have a real job. And I had the blessing of working with my parents kind of at home here and there to earn money. So I really never had a real job. I worked at a shoe store one time, but I hated that job. And if you don't mind, during the course of the talk here for the next few minutes, I'd like to refer to Scripture as we move along. But I was blessed with an opportunity right after I finished my bachelor's degree to fill in for a teacher at the middle school level in Tucson, Arizona. She went on maternity leave, so I had my first real job. And we were planning on getting married in August. So I thought I had kind of hit the jackpot, so to speak, and had that real job and was ready to go on with life. And something actually occurred after about 2 or 3 days on that job. And no, it was not a health concern. But I'd like you to, in the education world, we use the term pair share. In other words, find someone next to you, and I'd like you to talk for 30 seconds. What do you think happened to me on that first job? 30 seconds, talk with a neighbor. If no one's by you, visit with someone near you. Okay, 30 seconds is up. I have a volunteer. Volunteer, what do you think happened? Volunteer, first job. I want to say I was probably earning maybe $10,000 a year. Anybody? No, but it threw me off there. I wasn't expecting it. Challenged by the students. That did occur. And to save time, what actually occurred in conjunction with what you said, Victoria, is that after 2 or 3 days, I decided I hated education. And I had just wasted 3.5 years of my life going through the College of Education. I'm serious, folks. Have you heard about the joke that the guy that doesn't want to go to school, the guy that doesn't want to go to school, he's the principal of the school, and he doesn't want to go to school every day. That was me as a teacher. I was so unhappy, and I didn't want to show up for the job each day. I had one period, my major was instrumental music. I had 1 period of band, 1 period of choir, and 4 periods of theater. And I didn't know what I was doing in theater, and the kids completely ran over me. It was complete chaos. I'm sure they were glad when I left, but I just had a hatred for that job. Well, that brings me to my first bullet. And some of you have probably filled in all the blanks at this point. Don't limit God's leading with regard to your career options and opportunities. And I'm referencing Joshua 1:9. Have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous? Funny that we would read that right after Joe's talk. Do not be afraid, do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. So after I finished that assignment, if you will, this was back in the dark ages when there was no LinkedIn, recruiters, headhunters. You actually had to fill out a paper application and send it to the employer. So I flooded in the market, and I got what I thought was a great job. The Lord blessed me with a job in a smaller school teaching instrumental and vocal music. So that was the beginning of a 42-year career that has been blessed with my love for education, which I thought after 3 days in my first assignment was the worst mistake of my life. So we lived in a small town. Anybody familiar with Arizona out there besides my family? Anybody live in Arizona or near Arizona? Okay. So we were in a small town, small school system, K through 12, probably a graduating class of maybe 130 in the school. And I was the band and vocal person for the entire district. And believe it or not, it was a real, true blessing. And Kathleen, my wife, actually, we developed some relationships with the students. And if you know anything about the band and vocal area, you become very close to your students. It's like a second family. And we had a number of students who we developed friendships with that to this day are still meaningful to us. And that was such a blessing. One of my missions as an educator was to step into band programs that were bigger and better. I wanted bigger and better. I was very competitive. I came out of college wanting to get into a program that would be the best in the state. And if you know anything about Arizona, they have a very competitive, it's a very competitive band state, second probably only to a state like Texas, where instrumental music is as big as football. So I had an opportunity then, after again sending out the old paper applications, we moved to Flagstaff, Arizona. If you're familiar with Flagstaff, it's very close to the Grand Canyon. And the band program was bigger. I was strictly instrumental music at that point, and it was a great opportunity. We lived there for 1 year. By the way, while we're in Benson, we bought our first house. It was a 3-bedroom ranch. We got our first dog, by the way, who I think we found him after a rehearsal. We named him Ludwig, of course, von Beethoven. And he was a great dog. But unfortunately, when we moved to Flagstaff, I hope this is the correct part of the story, we had to give him to my mother because well, no, it may not be accurate. But anyway, we moved into like a one-bedroom apartment in Flagstaff. And again, that was a great opportunity for me. And again, we were trying to get closer to my parents and to her parents who lived in Tucson. So after that year, I put out applications again, and we ended up in Tucson, Arizona, very close, well, in the same proximity of our parents, at a school by the name of Amphitheater High School. And I was at Amphi High School for 5 years as a band director there. The last 2 years we were there, and my wife instructed the color guard. The last 2 years that I was there, we earned the most coveted award at the University of Arizona Band Day, otherwise referred to as the Nunemaker Award. So I had reached the pinnacle of the achievement in my career, and I was just blessed beyond imagination. So moving on from there, there was an opportunity at a local high school by the name of Saguaro. You might be familiar with the saguaro cactus in Arizona. This was Saguaro High School, and the pay structure was much different in that district. So I applied for the job, and ironically, I got the job, and overnight I increased my salary by $10,000. So I thought I had kind of, again, hit the jackpot financially. That's when, less than a six-figure salary was still admirable. But we were at Flagstaff for 3 years, and then I had something happen while we were there. Now, I should add, during this time that I was in Tucson, I decided that I should pursue a master's degree in music education. Not really sure why I did that, but the opportunity was there. We were right in the University of Arizona backyard, and the district provided tuition reimbursement programs, so I pursued my master's and finished that. So at the end of the third year at Saguaro High School, it was in a very large district, and the district ran into some very serious financial constraints. And at the end of my third year at Saguaro High School, which was the end of my 11th year as a teacher, they laid off 270 teachers. 270 teachers in one summer. And something happened that I never anticipated would happen in my career, and I was laid off. I didn't have a job, wasn't guaranteed of a job for the next school year. I had 2 sons, and that feeling as a major breadwinner that I needed to supply for my family, provide for my family. So I'd like to share the second bullet with you. Take advantage of opportunities to advance your knowledge, training, and education. It was at this point when I was grateful for not only completing my master's in music education, but also completing administrative certification in Arizona to qualify to be a principal, assistant principal, athletic director, etc. When I was at Saguaro, I had the privilege of being instrumental music director and athletic director at the same time. If you know anything about public high schools, that's almost unheard of combination. So there I was without a job, and really the feeling of uncertainty and the feeling of fear that Joe spoke of earlier this evening and that Joe Velarde mentioned was overwhelming, really, folks. In terms of where do we go from here, the music jobs were not abundantly available during that time in Tucson. So I decided to kind of start sending out applications for administrative positions. And one thing led to another, and I had an interview back in Flagstaff for an assistant principal and athletic director. Went to the interview, It went well. I accepted the position, verbal acceptance. And while I was there, about around the time I was there, I received an offer to go to Green River, Wyoming. I'm sure you don't know where that is, but it's near the Utah border. And so I figured, well, and they offered to fly me there, by the way, which is unheard of in the education business. If you're going to go to an interview, you find your own way there. You don't fly there. So they did offer me a flight. I went there. It was an assistant principal position. I interviewed, and a day or two later, I was informed that I was their candidate of choice. So I had already given Flagstaff a verbal commitment. If you've ever been in that situation, that was a hard decision to back away from that position and then accept the position in Wyoming, which I did. So, I don't know, a month later or so, we packed up the house and moved the two boys and my wife to Green River, Wyoming. So we went from probably an average temperature of 60, 70 degrees per year to blowing, snowing, blowing wind and snow that doesn't land, it just blows around all over. And we were there for 9 years. And in 9 years, you can appreciate this being in Pennsylvania, particularly those of you with children. We had one snow day in 9 years. And that was the day that it was 74 degrees below zero. And that was the only day in 9 years. I was not making a call on the school cancellations at that point, unlike now. But in 9 years, one day off from school. But you know what? Again, the Lord blessed me with a great opportunity there. And Travis may differ, but I have heard from him that it was a great place to raise kids. They got involved in youth sports. The school system was good. And a lot of great things happened there. I was very, very grateful for that. I think it was during my time in Wyoming that, speaking to the third bullet, focus on being a light in the workplace. I think I started to get away from that very self-focus in terms of being the best band director in the state to, as my Christian walk started to develop a little more firmly, being that light in the workplace. How can I exemplify God, God in the workplace, and be a light for him as I do my work each and every day with teachers, with parents, with students, etc. So at the end of the first 2 years there, I was assistant principal, and then 7 years after that, I was principal. Travis's freshman year, things started to go a little awry there, and I'm not exactly sure what happened, but the superintendent started to express a desire to change principals. And he shared that with me in a very surprising manner one day, and made it pretty clear that I should find another job. So there again, and this time an even worse situation, in my opinion. Travis just entering high school as a freshman. My oldest son was a senior, entering his senior year. And it was the only high school in town, guys. So it's not like there was another gig to go to. That was it. And the situation was such that I decided to start looking again, obviously. I had a colleague who, at the time, had lived in Pennsylvania for a while and said, hey, well, there's this opening in State College, Pennsylvania. I said, what? Where? And so we talked a little more about that. And I had circulated applications in various different places. And I decided to submit an application. Now, here's the God story related to that. I didn't expect an interview. They called me and said, hey, we'd like you to come out for an interview. I said, first of all, I was totally surprised. I thought, well, can we do that over the phone? I really can't afford to fly there. And they said, the secretary at the time said, I'm sorry, we cannot do that over the phone. So I said, well, in that case, I think I'm going to have to decline the interview, which I did. Hung up, conversation over. Next day, she calls back and said, I think we can accommodate that interview over the phone. How many of you have interviewed over the phone before? I'm sure many of you. Yeah? So that was a weird experience for me in that part of my career, and again, somewhat unheard of in the educational world. So I did the interview over the phone. How many of you have felt that the interview over the phone didn't really go that well? Some of you? Okay, well, that was the situation. So I went home and told Kathleen that really didn't go very well. I'm not expecting much. A day later, they called me and asked me to come to State College, Penn State territory, and come to the interview. And furthermore, they were going to pay for my flight. At the time, Travis was playing Little League Baseball and was an all-stars, if I may brag for a minute. And I didn't want to miss a game, so I decided to take a red-eye. I don't know if you remember that, Travis, but I took a red-eye flight from Salt Lake into State College. And I think I had an interview that day. So I don't remember what kind of condition I was in, but so I went to the interview, and again, I didn't feel like it went very well at all. And I knew in the back of my mind, I'm sure that Kathleen's not going to mind me sharing this story. She wasn't too enthralled with moving to the east. All of our family was in the west, and we've worked through this. And by the way, whether you are married or not, it's important to have a good cheerleader behind you. And I have been blessed with a wife who has cheered me on for over 4 decades in my career, and I'm super thankful for that. So turned out the interview went a lot better than I expected. They called me and offered me the job, and the salary was, at that time, better than I'd ever heard of in my lifetime, in my career as an educator. So I told Kathleen, I said, and the boys that we're moving, or that I have the job, I'd like to accept it. And it was somewhat filled with turmoil from that point on, just in terms of, moving hundreds of miles and moving the entire family. To make a long story short, we did move. I remember sending the boys, we sent the boys ahead of time, Travis and his brother Dustin. They drove across the country, a senior in high school and going to be a sophomore. And they, that was a time when I think cell phones were just coming out. I'm showing my age. Say, here, take this cell phone, use it, and call us if there's a problem. And they had places to stay. But soccer was starting, and I was getting the job late, and they needed to be here, and God brought them here safely. So, by the way, I wanted to share this verse about being a light. Matthew 5:16. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. So, my first day on speaking of fear and courage, my first day on the job at State College, school had already started. The first day I was on the job, they had a pep rally in the gym. And there are 3,000 students, roughly, attending the State College area high school, North High School and South. So I went into the gym, and before I knew it, I was asked to speak to the students. And I had not prepared, so I thought, okay, I'll get up in front of the students. The first thing I did, give me an S, give me a T, give me an A. So that was my welcome speech to the students at State College. We ended up being there 14 years, and I have a real quick story to tell because I'm getting the high sign in the back here. And this is another talking point that I want you to share with your partner. So I had a funny experience in State College. It involves a cow, a chicken, and a gorilla. But it's a very good leadership story, so I'd like you to talk with your neighbor for 30 seconds. What do you think a chicken, cow, and gorilla has to do with leading high school? 30 seconds with your neighbor. Okay, we're limited on time. Anybody have an idea that you'd like to throw out? You're saying I was in the gorilla costume. Well, close. In the interest of time, this is what happened. There's a long history of students causing a disturbance at the pep rallies in State College. Being in the backyard of Penn State, they tend to mimic everything the college students do. So there were 3 students, 3 seniors dressed up as a cow and a chicken and a gorilla. They came into the pep rally and wreaked havoc. I won't go into that, but they came in one end of the gym and ran out the other. And the previous principal had never addressed this sort of thing. So they were heading out, and I thought, well, I've got to do something. Otherwise, this is going to happen all the time. So instead of running out the end of the gym, I just walked briskly. But when I get to the end of the gym and the students were running outside and up the hill, I started running. And I am a runner, so I actually caught the chicken at the top of a hill because he was dressed in this costume. He ran out of gas, and I actually beat our security guards who were in a golf cart. So that's my claim to fame in State College. And but to make and later, by the way, one of the police officers that worked for the school delivered a chicken to our front door, kind of as a little joke about the whole thing. Anyway, I'm going to skip to the last bullet point. Remember the God moments and work for his glory. 1 Corinthians 10:31, whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God. After State College, I went from National Merit Students, one of the top performing high schools in the state, and moved to Hazleton, where we're dealing with guns and weapons and gangs. And so if you know anything about Hazleton, there's a good side of that too. But in every step of my career, God has blessed me with opportunities that I really did not foresee and placed them in my lap. So I want to encourage you, wherever you are in your career, work for his glory. Look for opportunities he gives you, and look for opportunities that he provides for you to advance your knowledge and skills. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Yep, that's my father-in-law, so he gets to deal with me all the time. Feel bad for that guy. One thing I'd like to add in what he said is just he always put himself out there. He was always persistent. He is such a hard worker. He doesn't give up. And I've really learned a lot from him over the years. Just, getting his doctorates, going for that superintendent job and the next one. And you keep going and you keep going for that next thing. And it's been impressive and awesome to watch since I known him. So thank you so much. All right, awesome.
Yeah, so we just want to thank all of you for coming. We are about to close out the event, but there's a bunch of people we have to thank. Erica.
Yep, I'll take that. So we could have not made this happen without all these amazing sponsors here that gave of their time, gave donations to the CF. This is a lot to prepare for them to get their speeches ready, get their breakout sessions ready. So every single one of them has been involved in the event, and I thank every one of you so much. Christopher Dean, who's one of the pastors at Riverbend, he did so much with our sign-ups, with our stuff here, our flyers, like stuff I didn't even ask. He just was getting me all this stuff. So thank you. It was amazing. Joe as well for opening up the space, Joe Bellarde. So thank you so much. Aurora, woohoo! Aurora, I asked her right away, could you be the MC? She brings such energy. She's amazing.
I think you told me I was going to
be
the
No, I don't do that. Do I? Maybe I do. But I had to have her, and thank you for everything you put into this event, Aurora, and everyone. My HIHR team, we have 6 or 7 of the HIHR staff here, our HR team, so thank you to each one of you for resume reviews, mock interviews, and everything you did. Jen, speaking about Gretchen, and thank you for your breakout too. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And if you didn't have a chance to make a donation, if you're interested to the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, you absolutely still can. Erica also has her own webpage, so we would be more than willing to give that to you if you'd like to make a donation at a later date. But thank you so much for coming. We hope you gained some little nuggets of information and inspiration you can take with you as you move forward in your careers in life.
And really quick, thank you.
No.
Anyone who's speaker or breakout, we are going to get a group picture, so if you could make your way to the stage. And then I'll be here at our HR booth. We have several other booths open for a little bit, so you're welcome to come chat afterwards. I'd love to hear from you. And so you're welcome to hang out and have some food and coffee.
Thank
Decaf.
you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful night. Thank you.